good day, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, live from Israel. The Rabbi Chaim Coffman, he's been going in deep with us, sharing so much, and we're on chapter 2, Mishna 7 today. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Rabbi's got to share. We spent 17 weeks working on or Mishnah 6, and I'm sure the Rabbi has method to his madness, and there's just goes to show you, folks, how deep you can elaborate on these Mishnah. And yeah, there's so much depth there. It's like a pool that is infinitely deep. And I'm sure he could have kept going on that same Mishnah if he wanted to. But we're moving on, so let's jump right in and see how the Rabbi's doing today. Rabbi Coffman, you're live on the air. It's your class, sir. I'm going to turn it over to you. Please share with us 2-7.
It's always a pleasure to be here, and there is no method to the madness. There's just a question of how much we get through, how much material. You never know, what's going to come out. We always say that the Torah is interconnected, so no matter what we speak about for however many hours, it always reconnects. Somehow you're going to say, hey, I spoke about this. What does that have to do with anything? Now I'm speaking at the end, and all of a sudden you see somehow there's a connection. So you say, oh, that was an accident. That was an accident, maybe, right? But we definitely believe that, everything in Torah, everything is intertwined. So, even if you get off topic, somehow miraculously, and again, there's nothing to do with me. This is everything from God himself saying, okay, we're going to reconnect the dots, right? Yeah. We're going to show how it all works. Even if I didn't think about it, even if I was telling stories, even this, even that, and you say, wait a minute, how do we get onto this, right? You get lost in the parable, right? It's kind of like a bad Freddy Krueger movie, right? You're in the dream, right? And you say, hey, how did I get here? I'm still in the dream.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
In the same way. Yeah, exactly. Lahavdil will make a big distinction there between the Nightmare on Elm Street and Torah, right? But Torah is always interconnected, right? From beginning to end, there's there's definitely a connection. Now, this Mishnah is interesting of itself. We're going to see a little bit about reincarnation. I think we're going to deal with that. That's going to come into play as we will see. The Mishnah says that he also saw a skull floating on the water. Now imagine, you go by the beach, go by a river, you see this skull floating in the water. What do you say to it? Because you drowned others, they drowned you. And those who drowned you will be drowned eventually. Now, seemingly, this is very, very prophetic. Why? First of all, what is the Mishnah telling you? Mishnah is telling you because you drowned others, they drowned you. What does that sound like? Sound like measure for measure. Because you did this, the same thing is going to happen to you, right? In other words, what goes around comes around. You did X, and Y is going to happen to you in a similar way, right? Measure for measure. Now, we don't always see, and we don't, as I mentioned many times, we don't always see the measure for measure. But there is definitely measure for measure. Right now, sometimes it's more obvious. In this case, because you drowned others, what happened to you? Right? You also drowned. There was a famous guy, I forget who it was. So famous, I forgot his name. Right? So wealthy, so mega wealthy, he said, I'll never die with my money. Right? He said, I'll never die with my money. Now, as we always say, you got to be careful what you wish for. Right? Or what comes out of your mouth. What happened? Goes to make a withdrawal in his whatever, in the vault. And it's Friday, and he gets locked in the vault. Now, nobody knows he's there. Now, let's imagine the vault, bang on the door, bang on the walls, right? Stainless steel, I assume, right? That's what it's made out of, pretty strong material. No one can hear you. Sitting there banging, 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 banging. Nobody hears him. It's Friday afternoon. What happens Friday afternoon? Everybody leaves, right? Everyone goes home. When do they come back? Usually on Monday, right? Sometimes maybe the bank's open on Saturday, whatever, but This bank wasn't open till Monday. So what happened? He's in the vault. And he's got billions. Gold bars, jewelry, money. He's got all these things. He's worth billions. But he's stuck in the vault. Right? And what happens? He dies. He dies in the vault.
Wow.
Right? He dies in the vault. So what was his money worth? He's like, I got so much money, I'll never die with my money. God's irony. Be very, very careful what you say. Right? Now, there's measure for measure. We don't always understand the measure for measure. Sometimes, again, it's more obvious. Right? You got a case. Another case, we'll just throw this out there because it's an obvious case. You take someone like Mr. Madoff. Right? What did he do? Made billions. Right? But he also lost it and that killed him. Right? That destroyed him. Right? He made a lot of money.
Yep.
He lost a lot of money. Right? And then he went out. So there are certain things we see very clear. Yeah, someone's going to say, what? You think that's the reason? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Right? We're not even looking for Kabbalah. We're not even going into oral law. That's simple explanation. Nothing to talk about. Right? Now, it says also you drowned. Sorry, those who drowned you will be drowned eventually. Now there's a lot of things going on here. Right? Maybe we'll just get to the introduction. Maybe we won't speak about anything else about the Mishna. We'll get to part 22. Right? Whatever. Probably next year sometime in the winter. Whatever it is. Right? What's going on here? Now, first part of the Mishnah says, you drowned others. Same thing's going to happen to you. It's going to be measure for measure. Now, those who drowned you. Now, let's say you're obligated over here, measure for measure. You're supposed to be drowned. Now, what about the person who drowned you? Isn't the person that drowned you is also liable? Right? 100% is also liable. So if he's liable, why does he get punished? Right? It's an obvious question. He drowned you. Okay. You get punished because you drowned others. The other person now is going to come and drown you. If he's going to drown you, isn't that self-prophecy? Right? Because you drowned others, someone's going to get you. Someone's going to whack you that way. But okay, even if that's true, as we say, God has a lot of messengers. Very good, but he's got free will. If he's got free will, why is he liable? I mean, that is the answer. He's got free will, he is liable. Right, but if God says, hey, you drowned others, I'm going to have someone drown you. The guy that drowned you, the person that drowned you, you're going to say, okay, God picked him to drown you. No, he didn't. We're going to see that's not the case. He's obligated to be drowned over here. Someone jumps up and drowns him, and then after 120 years, he sees that he's in deep trouble. God's going to punish him. Why are you punishing me? That's what you sent me to do. God said, I didn't send you to do anything. You took it upon yourself. The fact that you took it upon yourself, you're liable. Yeah, but so that's the whole question here.
Is not a good thing.
Yeah. In this case, since he did, however he acted on free will. Right? He's going to say, well, you put me to this. What happened to free will? Right? What's the obvious case? The obvious case is the Egyptians. Because Abraham wants to understand the way God runs the world. God says, no one can understand me. Your people are going to be punished. Your offspring are going to be punished. Whole question, why there's punishment over here, why the severe punishment? That your nation, your eventual nation, the Jewish people are going to go, into a nation, not their own. They're going to get abused, right? They're going to suffer, and all this, but I'm going to take them out. I'm going to take them out with a great hand, right? With an outstretched hand, with a mighty arm, and all that. So there's an obvious question. Because we understand, even though the Torah doesn't tell me explicitly, we understand who's that going to be. It's going to be the Egyptians. If it's going to be the Egyptians, why are they punished? Why does God destroy them? In other words, we already know history. We already know what was going to be. So if God picked the Egyptians to do it, then they shouldn't get punished.
Yeah, but they were extremely cruel, yes?
Even though they were extremely cruel, God didn't pick them. They chose to do it themselves. So, but why are they punished so severely? They're punished so severely because, exactly what you said. They went beyond what they should have done. God wasn't happy with what they did, and therefore they're going to get punished. Right? But again, Harvey Shluchim Lamakov, a lot of messengers. Didn't have to be the Egyptians. Could have been the Romans. Could have been the Byzantines. Could have been, the Greeks. Could have been anybody. But they're the ones who chose. They're the ones who decided they wanted to do it. If that's the case, they're liable. Not only are they liable, they get destroyed. They get absolutely destroyed. But we could ask the question, from this Mishnah, those who drowned will be drowned eventually. Why? They're only doing what God wanted to do. They're doing, this person's supposed to be drowned. So they come and say, okay, we'll do it. We'll take care of it. We'll drown them. Very good. So if God chose them, quote unquote, and they're going to say, you chose me to do this, so therefore why am I punished? Right? Why should I be punished? I'm doing what you wanted me to do. So what's the answer? The answer is, God didn't put a gun to their head. They chose to do what they wanted to do. Right? So now we're going to have to see. It's complicated. It's extremely complicated over here. Same thing, we'll just throw this out there. Same thing by the Nazis, Yamach Shema. May they rot, may they be blotted out, etc. So there's a book written by the Harvard Chair of Holocaust Studies. I don't know if he's still there. He wrote a book called Hitler's Willing Executions. Now, some people think, or probably a lot of people think, well, if Hitler put a gun to your head, you do what he said. But this book is a nice 600, 700-page book, probably damage somebody even the size of you, probably knock you off your block over here, knock your block off, right, as Peanuts would say, right? Some of the characters in Peanuts are going to knock your block off, right? So what did this book go to show? What did it go to prove? That people joined and agreed with Hitler not because they put a gun to his head, because they believed 100% what he was doing was right. Because people make the mistake and say, oh, look, he forced people to do it. He didn't force people to do it. Right? But the irony of all ironies is that the most sophisticated nation at that time was the Germans. Yeah, one second. They were the Germans. So if that's the case, who joined the Third Reich? Who were the first people to join the Third Reich? Doctors, lawyers, academics the worst. Right? But they joined willingly. They weren't the skinheads of today. They believed, the Jews were a problem. They had to be eradicated. Listen, he was a great orator. He was a great speaker, wrote this book, been translated, I don't know how many languages. Mein Kampf, just as a side point, I'm not so sure, most people know, the book Mein Kampf was based on Martin Luther's 95 Theses. Martin Luther, founder of the Protestant movement, anyone who doesn't know. Martin Luther, an rabid anti-Semite. Regardless of all that book sold millions, right? Translated into how many languages? I don't know. Hundreds of languages. Anti-Semitism is unfortunately alive and well today. But the problem is nobody forced these people to join. But not only that, the ones that first joined, they were academics. They were doctors. They were lawyers. They didn't have a 25 IQ. They didn't have a 50 IQ, right? These were the movers and shakers, right? These were the quote-unquote big thinkers, big doers, smart people. So you ask the million-dollar question, how could such smart people be racist? Absolutely racist. Right? What's the answer? What's the simple answer? Simple answer is that knowledge can only take you so far. Right? Morality can only take you so far without something guiding it. Person can have over 100 IQ, be an absolute genius. And we do know from history, people with very, very high IQs are the most messed up people. You probably remember in the 80s, or I remember the 90s later, I forget, the older I get, you remember the Unabomber, right? You remember the Unabomber? The guy was a misfit, an absolute misfit, a genius though. A total genius, misfit 100%, right? So you can take the most intelligent people. You take someone like Aristotle. Aristotle, just I'm on this thread, I'm going to beat it to death. Aristotle, one of the greatest thinkers of all time. right? There's no question. Problem with Aristotle, besides the fact that he was wrong, the problem with Aristotle is Aristotle was a disgusting individual. Happened to be a womanizer, other things, as well. And the students once caught him, doing something disgusting. They said, "How could you do this? Great Aristotle." Right? What did Aristotle say? Or as they quote him in rabbinic literature, Aristo. What did Aristo say? Today I'm not Aristotle. Right? There's Aristotle, the philosopher. There's Aristotle who does terrible things. Now, the problem is, you also probably remember years ago, there were commercials getting people to read, right? And they said a mind's a terrible thing to waste, right? Now everything got shorter. Now people just say a mind's a terrible thing. People don't want to use the mind, right? 1% think, 4% think they think, 95% rather die than think. That's where we're holding today. And the biggest question some people may ever ask in their lifetime is, do I put ketchup or mustard on my hot dog? That's where people are holding. You're watching your CFL game, you tell your wife, let's make some hot dogs, right? You say, wait a minute, ketchup, mustard, wait a minute, there's a commercial. Do I have time? Okay, we're digressing here, right? But the point is, people don't think. People don't think. Now, if you have someone that's over-intelligent, and I had this when I was growing up, that, I had kids in school, would make anti-Semitic comments. They weren't stupid. They certainly weren't stupid. So how could they say such a thing? Right? So either you tell me they're absolute fruitcakes, or it's just kids being cruel. That could be. Very well could be. But anti-Semitism's in the air anyway. But someone who has over-intelligence, right? Someone who's, who's pretty bright, going to go to an Ivy League school or whatever, so how can they believe such a thing? How can they think such a thing? Yeah, 1 second. How can they believe and think such a thing? Because intelligence only takes you so far. Right? I heard a great rabbi once say, I'd be willing to send my kids to university, send them to college, if they're going to come out more moral than when they went in. He said, that's obviously not the case. Right? Intelligence is finite. But you would think the more intelligent a person is, then obviously not going to be anti-Semitic, not going to be racist, not going to do stupid things like everyone else is doing, etc. They should be a cut above everybody else because they're more intelligent. Now, I found this out the hard way. I figured I couldn't stand my high school, couldn't stand kids in my high school, even though many of them much smarter than me, doing the same stupid things everyone else is, getting drunk, doing drugs, other things, but they were going to go to Harvard, Dartmouth, other places, good schools. I was like, wow, I don't want to have anything to do with these kids. Most of them, forget they were non-Jews, doesn't really matter, right? But they didn't act, and I wasn't religious at this point. Oh, I won't say that, I was a choir boy by any stretch, but compared to this, I knew there was right and wrong, right? And I didn't necessarily know it was based on Torah, but okay, certain things a person shouldn't do. So I got to university, and I thought, I got to Columbia University, top 1% of college students. I was like, this is going to be different. This is going to be a lot different than high school. It wasn't. It was just people more intelligent doing the same thing that everyone else is doing. It's going to be lawyers, doctors, engineers, different things. And I'll tell you the truth, I wasn't impressed. I'm going to say, who are you? You're right. I'm a nobody. Doesn't matter. Right? But the point is, I would have thought people are here to learn. They want to get the best education. It's not just about, I remember one class, someone raised their hand and said, do I have to know this for the test? I'm like, what are you, in 5th grade? This isn't a college, some junior college somewhere in the prairies. Come on. This is a top university. Now, how could people think these things, and do these things? The worst anti-Semitism today. I know you got 5 questions. I'm not stopping you. I see the question. 1 second. So where's the worst anti-Semitism today? The worst anti-Semitism today is on college campuses. Right? There's a lot of liberalism, tremendous amount of liberalism on college campuses, but the more intelligent the person, the more they can go this way. Now you're going to say that, intelligence should breed intelligence. That's what it should do. But I'll tell you the following example from Noah Weinberg of blessed memory. He tells the story. He started the yeshiva Eish Torah. He started actually 3 or 4 different yeshivas, but this was the yeshiva that had his name stamped all over it, was yeshiva Eish Torah. And he tells the following story. He says, your 5-year-old comes home and he's dressed up in all these old clothes, like clothes of the 1700s. Right? He's got this funny hat. He starts speaking a little bit of French, and he says, Mom, Dad, he says, I'm Napoleon. Come on. You're not really Napoleon. Your name is Beryl. Whatever. It's like, no, I was just kidding. I put on these old clothes, whatever. Right? Comes along someone who's 27. They dress up, these old clothes, dress up like Napoleon. And they say, today I'm Napoleon. Come on, your name is John. How could you be Napoleon? Napoleon was 300 years ago, and he's also a lot smaller, right? Whatever. I guess good things happen with small people. Imagine the power that he had, and he was like 3 feet tall. He's like a midget. You can sit there and stuff him, but he had all this power, tremendous amount of power. So what does John say? You're right. Maybe I'm not not Napoleon, but really I could be just incognito. Right? In other words, I'm really hiding. I'm hiding behind the mask. Right? That's what people do. That's what goes on today. Why do I say that? Because you can have someone with, however much intelligence that they have, and they can act like an animal, and they can do all kinds of things. And they say, no, incognito. This is my alter ego. This is what I do when no one's looking. Well, what do you mean no one's looking? There's no such thing as compartmentalization in Judaism. You are what you are. You should be on the same on the outside as you are on the inside. Right? In other words, you're going to be fanatic on the outside. You're a fanatic on the inside. You got to show both. You can't say one thing and do another. That does not go. That's a contradiction in terms. Now, this is good for the month of Elul coming up before Rosh Hashanah. Right? I got 10 days. A little more than 10 days. Till Rosh Hashanah, it's all about judgment. God knows. God knows who's been naughty or nice, right? Knows who's been naughty or nice. Checks your heart, checks your soul, etc. But we are, isn't it true? Someone's going to say, we are a walking contradiction. We always do things wrong, right? You're trying to think about relish on your hot dog watching the CFL, right? You imagine what God's going to say on that. Thank God I don't put on my George Burns glasses, my funny mustache. You would be toast. But I have mercy over here, and I'm in a good mood, right? So what happens? What happens? You're going to say, I didn't pray as well. I didn't do this. I did things I shouldn't have done. That's all for Yom Kippur, to beat your chest, to say I've done all these things wrong, right, etc. But aren't we a walking contradiction? How many of us today can say we're totally righteous? Besides me, how many people can say they're totally righteous? Nobody. But everyone's going to say, I want to go in the right direction. I want to do the right thing, right? The evil inclination stops me, right? That's 100% true. Right? That's 100% true. But the reality is, what? It doesn't matter. Because I had someone tell me last week, one of my Q&As, said, Rabbi, how do I get out of the cesspool I'm already in? I'm already in a cesspool. I'm already doing terrible things. I want to be better. I want to raise myself to a higher level. So a cousin of my wife's, very active in doing outreach among Israelis. He's in a different country at the time. And this other Israeli, is acting very immoral and different things. And he said, and so this cousin of my wife says, you're so immoral, you're so steeped in garbage, you need a snorkel in order to breathe. It's a great line. He leveled this guy, right? A number of years later, this guy shows up in Jerusalem dressed like an ultra-Orthodox Jew. And this cousin of my wife's looks at him and is like, you? So what happened? He said, what happened to you? He said, you were so immoral. I said, yeah, I know. It takes a snorkel in order to breathe. I get it. He said, you have to understand that hit me so far inside. It made me think about what I'm doing. Now, somebody like me, I probably got beaten to a pulp with a baseball bat or a Louisville Slugger, right? Okay, for this person, it worked. For this person, it worked. So what's the point? Even though we do things wrong, what does God want to see? He wants to see improvement. He wants to see us work hard. Now, we may not reach where we're supposed to go, but we have to start somewhere. Right? Even if a person's on the bottom, the only place you can go is up. I don't really like that statement because, it's a nasty statement. It's saying, well, you can't go further down. That's not true. Tell that to an alcoholic. Tell that to a gambler. How much lower could you go? You could go so low, you could lose everything. That's how low you could go. It can go even further than that. So based on that, intelligence, as we mentioned, does not breed, more intelligence, does not breed immorality. So when I had a crisis in college, in university, one of my crises were, I don't understand these people, intelligent, more intelligent, etc. How could they still be doing the same stupid things people were doing in high school? They're just, maybe even smarter. Right. I also went to a Jewish school, taking classes in Judaism, the head of the conservative movement in New York. So that was sort of my anchor. But still, that bothered me to no end. And it made me realize, had I known Torah, had I known what the Torah stands for, it makes perfect sense. Why does it make perfect sense? I'll let you ask me questions. Makes perfect sense. I'll give you a parable. Right? Imagine going out in the middle of the ocean. You're going in the Atlantic. Right? You're going you're going in the Pacific. You're going to the Pacific. Right? You go on your sailboat. Everything's great. You don't have a motor. We're going to make it very easy. You don't have a motor, and someone says, we're going to have some fun. What do? They take the rudder and they throw it overboard. Now, if you're in the middle of the ocean without a rudder and only a sail, what's going to happen? Where's the boat going to go? Wherever the wind takes it. You're just going to go around in circles. You're not going to get anywhere. So what's the parable? Parable is, if you don't have an anchor, right? No pun intended. You don't have an anchor. That anchor's called Torah. Guess what? You're just going to keep spinning and spinning, and you're not going to get anywhere. When I first went to yeshiva, this question was answered within a week, within a couple days. All these questions I had were answered. Because if you don't learn Torah, you don't have Torah part of your life, you don't have morality. Your interactions between others, who knows?
No
You'll
rudder.
say something, you won't say something. You won't be in control. You have no control at all. Right? Torah is the anchor. But I didn't know that. If I would have known that, would have saved me so much anguish. I would have said, of course these people act like animals, because they are animals. Right? They don't have anything guiding them. I don't care, Christian, Muslim, whatever. They're animals. They don't have anything truly guiding them. Right? If they don't have anything guiding them, what's going to happen? So in my language, it's going to spin and spin and spin, because the rudder was thrown overboard. Now, you're interrupting me about 8 times, so you must have at least 6 questions. Floor is yours. Go ahead.
Well, it's not really questions. I wanted to see if you could put this in perspective for me, because it's something I've always had difficulty trying to balance out. One wise person I knew, and he was adamantly against the notion of obligation. And where does one put a sense of duty and obligation in light of what you're sharing with us? Because we know that a lot of Egyptians and the Germans would have done what they did out of duty or a sense of obligation. And so this person I mentioned, would always try to explain to me that it leads to negativity. But I find, especially like when studying Torah or scripture, when you're aware of an answer to something, you're almost obliged to respond the way the Torah teaches. And
why? That's a major faux pas. That's a major faux pas. Why? Because if you show something, I'll give you an example. Talking to a cousin of my wife, total secular Jew, Israeli, and that was shortly after the Gulf War, right, 1991. So I asked him, what are the odds? What are the odds 39 Scud missiles, shot at very close range, all of them end up in open areas? Now, we just saw what happened, what happened with this bombing in Afghanistan, and how many people killed. The numbers are rising, keep rising, right? A horrific thing, and before that, before the Gulf War, there were like 287, Americans killed in Beirut with a bus bombing. One bombing killed almost 300 people. So now over here, 39 missiles, Scud missiles, supposed to be extremely accurate. So you got one or two scenarios. Either you got the stupidest idiots shooting them, could very well be, right? That's one possibility. They don't know what they're doing. Or there's something else going on. So I asked this person, I said, what are the odds? What are the odds 39 Scud missiles are going to hit open areas, right? Even better, this last war with Hamas and all the missiles, the thousands of missiles. Okay, some of them actually did damage. Some of them were intercepted, right? 60, 70%, I think, were intercepted, or maybe a little bit less. Some of them actually caused damage, real damage, and the others didn't cause any damage, right? Ended up in empty areas. Now, you're talking about 5-kilometer radius, 10-kilometer radius, right? 20, I mean, some of these missiles can reach even Tel Aviv, so they got even greater range, right? 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers, whatever it is. So that I can understand they could veer off or whatever, unless you tell me these are extremely accurate. But what about someone who lives on the border of Gaza? The siren goes off, they get like 30 seconds to jump into a bomb shelter. You know, they got like 30 seconds, not even. They just run because who knows where the missiles are going to fly, right? And where they're going to hit, right? So now, if a lot of them, I said not all of them, but if a lot of them, and the majority either get intercepted or they end up in open areas causing minimal damage, the odds are extremely slim, right? In other words, if they're so close, they should be hitting houses, buildings every single time. So again, you have two options. There are only two options. It's either you're going to tell me you got the stupidest person shooting the missiles, right? They don't know what they're doing, no matter how accurate they are. One option. Second option is there's something else going on. So comes along the secular Israeli and he says, I can figure it out mathematically. Takes off his watch, got a Casio watch. I don't know if people still have Casio watches with with calculators. And he starts pushing buttons. I was like, are you for real? I was like, what if it's 1 in a billion? What if it's 1 in a trillion? The odds are extremely small. So that's my answer. If the odds are extremely small, how can we see the same thing and you're not seeing? That's an absolute miracle, right? How can you look at the same event, right? This is really the essence of your question. Two people can look at the same event. One person says this is God and it's a miracle. The other person says it could happen. My lucky day. My lucky day. There's a story, one of these wars with Hamas. There's a story, a missile flies overhead. They try and intercept it, and they missed it, and it's heading straight towards Tel Aviv. Right? For sure, it's going to hit some sort of building, cause damage, and, they don't know what to do. And what happens? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere, a wind comes along. A wind takes the missile, takes it out to sea. Now, what are the odds of that? Also pretty slim. Also very slim. So two people can see the same thing. They can see the exact same thing and say, it's not a sign of God. That's absolutely not a sign of God. It was luck. Okay, so now this really gets to the question. Something happens once, you can tell me, maybe you got lucky. Something happens twice, maybe you can tell me that. Something happens 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 10 times, at point blank range, there's something else going on. Now, if somebody does not want to see that, what are they going to say? They're not going to say it was a miracle. It was luck. It could happen. The odds are a point billion to 1. Right? It's like 0.000, put in 10 zeros. That's the odds. If I was a betting man, and I say, okay, those are the odds, I'm going to put a ton of money down saying it's not going to happen. Right? It's not even a zero. It's less than a 0% chance. Right? It's never going to happen. You can say, oh, it could happen. Logic. Right? Take $1 billion. Right? Put the money down on the table. What are the odds? You win. 1 billion times you win. Sorry, 999 million, 999 million point 9. Until infinity, you're going to be successful. That's a sucker bet. Right? That's in the vernacular. We call that a sucker bet. Because you know what's going to happen. So now someone says, it can still happen. I have free will. Like a college student once told me many years ago, you can prove to me this. 99%, I still have my 1% chance of free will. See, non-Jews would never say that. It's only a Jew's got everything to lose. I said, I was a history major. So what I have to do in history, what I have to do as part of my grades, most of my grades, I had to sling it. I had to write a paper. I had to write a paper, 10-page paper, 20-page paper. I became, pretty good at doing that, taking certain information and just slinging it, whatever. So what happened? So I said, okay, how do you write a term paper? So I asked this college student, how do you write a term paper? He says, very, very easy. He said, you have a thesis, good. You have a thesis, now you prove it, right? You have all these paragraphs trying to prove it. And in the end, you draw a conclusion based on evidence. Very good. Right? That's how you do it. Anyone doesn't know, that's how you write a term paper. So I said, what would happen? What would happen if in the middle of your analysis, you start to have doubts? In other words, you start to question some of the sources. And then in the end, in your conclusion, you leave it up to doubt. They said, you can't do that. I said, why not? Because if you try and prove something to show you didn't prove it, you're going to fail. You're going to get an F. I said, oh, very good. Because the whole thing is about evaluating evidence. If you have 70, 80% evidence, and it looks really unshakable, and you got all this proof, and you negate all the other things that say against it, you have your conclusion. If you did your job right, you have enough evidence, then your conclusion should be solid. I said, but if you tell me logically, that had nothing to do with the oral law, all the Karaites will be happy here. You tell me logic dictates that if I could prove it 99%, doesn't matter the other 1%. If I could prove it 51%, you go after the majority. So if you go after the majority, I'm good. I prove my point. Right? But this was cognitive dissonance. But I still have free will to choose the other way. Again, if I have 60 to 70% evidence, the other 30% evidence I may find, I may not find, doesn't really matter. But I have a ton of evidence. How can you tell me if I don't find the other 30%, I still have free will? That doesn't make sense. Right? Where's the cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance is you have all this evidence. I can't really say anything against it. The evidence really looks compelling, but if I believe it, what's the problem? If I believe it, just like my problem with Stephen Hawking and Mr. Einstein, Stephen L., right? They wanted to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt it's an expanding universe. If it's an expanding universe, who made it expand? Right? So what does Steve say? Steve says, we don't have we're going to find the evidence. We can't prove it scientifically. Very good, Steve. So what's the answer? I would have been obnoxious as I could be. Steve, give me a scientific answer. There is no scientific answer. We're going to hold by evolution. Evolution, a different issue, right? But what are you going to come on to evolution? What's the other alternative? There's only one other alternative. The only other alternative is the Bible actually might be true. And that Stephen Hawking said we'll never go to. Einstein said we'll never go to. We'll never give the creationists their side of the story. Again, let's go to the basics.
Richard Feynman has come up with some really neat ideas recently that have to do with in the expanding universe that, they think it's going to go to the big freeze, right? Eventually everything will dissipate, so spread out. But he talks about a state of equilibrium that is equal to the state that existed prior to the initial Big Bang, and how the state itself gives rise rather than looking for a specific, like, igniting spark.
The question is, even with that, right, he's not here to answer that, right? But my question still stands. You don't have scientific proof. If you don't have scientific proof, you have to at least entertain the possibility that maybe what the story of creation is true. That's the only other alternative. But they say, no, in his book, A Brief History of Time, he says that's what he seems to prove, that the creationists are right, but he says no rational person should believe it. He just took all the scientific evidence and he flushed it down the toilet. That's what he did. He said, don't believe all the evidence. Even if I'm one of the top scientists ever, do not believe any of the evidence because we can't give the creationists their day. So we're going to hold by evolution. And all of academia holds by evolution. So very good, but they don't have proof. So this cognitive dissonance. The dissonance is we're never going to find the missing link. They're never ever going to find it, but they still have hope. They still have hope. You know what's even greater hope than that? It's called the Immaculate Conception. The Immaculate Deception. That, that's even a greater hope. You got proof for that. They got zero proof for that. No witnesses, nothing.
I thought there are certain frogs that do that.
So you got all kinds of things with no evidence. See, they're going to say, oh, you're the one with the leap of faith. Science doesn't have an answer. I'll ask a scientific question, right? Anyone in the scientific community can find me, on Facebook, Rabbi Chaim Coffman at gmail.com. I want an answer. The question is, we're gonna speak about Corona for half a second, even though no one wants to hear about it. Here in Israel, we were the first ones to get the vaccine. We were all the guinea pigs, right? In order to get the vaccine. So now, 20%, maybe 15%, 20% got the third vaccine. So if we were the first ones to get the vaccine, right? And most people have had both of them. Why are the numbers spiking? Why should the numbers be spiking? Now, most of the people that are getting sick today, and some of them getting seriously sick with Corona, are people that never got the vaccine. There are people that got the vaccine that got sick from it as well, right? Very small percentage, but they didn't get very sick at all. Had some symptoms, whatever, they're fine. Most of them are fine. And the majority of people are dying are compromised immune systems or they're very old, 90, 80, 70s, something like that. Right? So my question is, according to science, you got 80% who had the vaccine. So even if you were to tell me a lot of people got it now, didn't get the vaccine, whatever, but why the numbers so high? 10,000 in one day in Israel, that's huge. I haven't seen no statistics since January. That's how bad it is. Now it seems they're claiming, well, the numbers are going to start to go down. That's the peak. Now the numbers are going to start to go down. But if 80% got the vaccine, and the vaccine is 95%, let's do the math. I was good at this type of math, not geometry or things I had to see more than one dimension.
Probability, sure, yeah.
According to the math, 95%, right? After 2 shots, so let's say it goes down to 80%. 80% doesn't mean it should spike to 6.5% positive rate. That doesn't make any sense logically, right? I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer over here, right? You're going to say it's a variant. There are going to be a lot of different variants. We're going to have to get a booster shot every year. You hold by it. You don't hold by it. Doesn't matter, right? We're not going to be done with this unless God says we're going to be done with it. So what does the scientific community have to say? Zippo. Or have anything to say. They'll say the majority of people getting the ones unvaccinated. Very good. But if the majority of people were vaccinated, why did it spike so high? Why does it spike so high now? After 6 months, 8 months, where the majority of people got it, doesn't make logical sense. People, the anti-vaxxers say it's made up, it's this, it doesn't matter, right? We're not even getting into that. I'm just asking statistically. Statistically, that doesn't add up, right? The scientific community does not have an answer, right? They're not the end all things, right? The Gemara says we're going to bash them now because we're going to have some fun. Imagine if I drank caffeine right now, it would kill everybody, right? Imagine the scientific community. They don't have an answer for this. There are other things they don't have an answer for. So it comes on the Talmud. Talmud says, Tov sheberoifim legehenim. The best of the doctors go to hell. What do you mean the best? So the answer is that doctors see miracles left and right. Right? They see miracles with the human body. No question. But who are some of the biggest deniers of God in the world? Doctors. Right? They think they're God's gift to the world. I told this story before. A doctor thinks he's God's gift to the world, right? He tells this guy, I don't need God. I'm going to operate. I'm going to save your daughter, this and that. He told him to take it back. He refused. Guy goes to a convention. He's up giving a PowerPoint presentation, 300 people in the middle of the convention, right? In the middle of the presentation, what happens? You know what they say? You got to go when you got to go. So you only have to hold it for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. This guy got totally embarrassed in front of, 300 people. So he said, I can't even control my own bowel movements. Now, does that make him a choice of b'tshuva? Does that make him returning to Judaism? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. But they got the gall to say, I know this, I know that, I know the other thing, right? But they're heretics, right? Most of them. Because someone stitches up a person. Well, we'll just throw this out there. The Torah says, the book of Exodus, rape, that it'll surely heal. Who's it talking about? Doctors, right? Why is double language? It's double language because you can only heal, the doctors can only heal on the outside, right? As we're going to quote from famous Monty Python, that's only a flesh wound. That's only a flesh wound. So you never know where this useless knowledge ever comes up. A flesh wound.
A flesh wound.
It's got a wound on the outside, right? That a doctor can heal. If a doctor does surgery and he stitches up the person, now he can say this should happen, that should happen. He can make predictions based on where the person's holding, what type of operation it is, and but a lot of times the doctor will say, I did what I should do, and we'll have to wait and see. There's a famous statement here in Israel. People say that the surgery was successful, but the person died. But the patient died, right? So you can have surgery be successful. Nonetheless, the patient dies. Something else could happen. All the organs go, whatever it is. But when a doctor says, at least he's admitting, when a doctor says, well, when I stitch them up, we have to see what's going to be. Are they in control how the body heals? No. Now, they can make predictions, but they're in absolutely no control. They're in no control. What happens when the body gets an infection? Maybe they're expecting an infection, maybe not. So they have to deal with the infection. Then the infection, something else happens. Then something else, everything could be fine. Everything could be treated. But what's the problem? They have to say we're not in control. They have to say after we stitch them up that, we did everything we could. Now we have to sit and wait. Sometimes it'll be good. Sometimes, God forbid, it'll be bad. It could be really bad. The person will die. Bottom line is they're not in control. That 100%, they have no control over whatsoever. But who's got some of the biggest egos in the world are doctors. They play life and death, right? They think they're God. They say, the person's not going to live. I just read a story earlier. Someone is deteriorating. They think, do not resuscitate. The person's going to die anyway. What's the big deal? But what happened? They found out it was an infection. Once the infection was taken care of, person got better. Person got stronger. In a number of cases, they lived a number of years, right? So the doctors are the ones, not all the time, but a lot of them are saying, come on, no quality of life. They're going to get worse. They're going to die. Just let them die. Just put them in hospice and that's it. But we have to be advocates. We have to fight every breath, right? The last verse in Psalm says, Kol neshama ta'alilka. Every soul is going to call out to God, right? It's going to praise God, right? Some say, don't read it neshama, read it neshima. What does neshima mean? Breath. All my breath. Even if I can't do much, even if I wanted to pray and I wanted to do other things, I get credit for doing it, even if I couldn't, right? Because it's all in my mental capacity. But you want to knock them off, you don't even give them that. You're going to say, what's a few breaths? What's life anyway? How do they determine what life is? What quality of life is, right? We've told the story before. So, it's a good story, scary story that, someone's on a respirator and, family decides want to pull the plug. So tell the doctor, okay. Doctor claims even if the person comes out of it, they're going to be a vegetable, blah, blah, blah. So he pulls the plug. What happens? Doctor has a nightmare. What's the nightmare? The soul comes to him. And it's clear. This is the soul. The soul comes to him and says, you murderer! You killed me! I was just waiting to get my atonement over here. I had to wait a few days. I would have gone straight into paradise. I was suffering. That was all the suffering I needed. Now I'm in Gehenna. Now I'm suffering. This guy woke up in a sweat, as you can imagine. And he got the dream a second night. Tried to blow it off. He got the dream a second night. Same dream. You're a murderer. You killed me. Now, this can make a tremendous impression on somebody, right? There's no question. Eventually led him to repentance, right? But we think, person sitting there, seemingly they're suffering, which maybe they are, but in the end, they can't hear, they can't speak, or they can't speak, they can hear, but, they're just unconscious. So what happens? We think we know better. We can't make that person suffer. but the suffering they're getting right now, that's their olam haba. If they understand and they admit the suffering is there for atonement. If they admit it, fine. If they just say, woe to me, I'm suffering, they don't get the atonement, right? They have to admit that's what they're going for. I just thought today, interesting enough, that the Torah says at the beginning of the parsha we just read, Parshas Ki Savo, talks about the Jews going into Israel, going into the land of Israel. So the connection, what did last week's parsha say at the end? Last week's parsha spoke about wiping out Amalek. So there's always a connection between the last verse and the verse before it. So what does going into the land have to do with Amalek? Because Gemara says first thing the Jews are going to do when they went into the land is destroy Amalek, right? You can't have Amalekian thoughts of, there's no God, there's no supernatural, right? You wipe them out, right? That's what you have to do. You have to wipe out that mentality. And that's the same mentality, unfortunately, we're living in this world today. Because it's a very godless world. God's, hiddenness within hiddenness. But even without that, so why do I bring that up? Because my Rebbe brought down, heard of the name of one great rabbi, I didn't mention who, but he says, imagine you come into the land, you're living in the land just like you're living in any other land. You say the land of Israel is like any other land. It doesn't have to do with the land of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. God gave it to the Jewish people. You don't get the mitzvah of living in the land. Right? There is a mitzvah to live in the land, the land of Israel for a Jew. But there are different reasons why, let's say, he can't be there. If he's learning better outside the land, he's got better livelihood outside the land, maybe he has to take care of his parents, got other things. Right? Not everyone can get there. So it's what we call a mitzvah kiyumis. If you can do it, very good, right? It's not like you're going to transgress every second for not living there if you don't have a good excuse. If you have a good excuse, okay. If you can get there, fine. If you can't get there, okay, it's a different issue. But what was the point? If you're living in the land, you think you're getting the mitzvah just by living in the land, think again, right? Because why? Because you think you're living in the land just like it's any other land. Living in Tel Aviv is no different than being downtown Miami, or maybe it's similar to San Francisco. Because it's becoming the gay capital of the world, or the lesbian capital of the world over there. So maybe they're similar. But even you're going to say that we're the same, there's no difference. There's no inherent holiness, God forbid. You don't get the mitzvah. Doesn't matter how long you lived in the land. You don't get the mitzvah. Similar idea, not exactly the same, but I think it's similar. Similar in the sense that if a person is suffering, you don't admit that he's suffering for atonement. And you have to own up, this is what's going on. Otherwise, it doesn't work that way. Same thing. You want to live in the land of Israel and you think it's like Paris? You think it's like, I don't know, Swaziland or wherever, and there's no difference? You don't get that aspect of the mitzvah, by living in the land. So it's all about mentality over here. It's all about how I look at things the way the Torah wants me to look at it. Right? So here you got doctors saying no quality of life, no this, no that. Do they know what's going on? No. Do they, can they say anything about what's going on inside a person's body and how it's going to heal? No. Can they give me a straight answer? Any of them? Why 80%? 80% or more have this vaccine, and now all of a sudden the numbers are spiking when it should be 95%. Right? So you're going to say, okay, I have a partial answer. Because the longer you've had the vaccine, the less effective it is. That's why you need a booster shot. Good. Good. So let's say it's 60%. Let's say it's 60%. Right? I'll be generous. If it's 60%, the number still shouldn't be that high. It's still very high numbers. In other places, it's going up exponentially. It boggles the mind. Right? I see these things all the time. Get the booster shot or die. Very comforting. It's like, they have control over here. Like, you're going to die if you don't get the booster shot. Now, if you're under 40, the odds of you dying, even without the booster shot, even without the other shots, are very slim. Extremely slim.
Yeah, but we're not under 40, Rabbi. I got my second shot yesterday, and it feels like I've been punched very hard in the arm.
Yeah, that's part of the, that should be the worst side effect. I had flu-like symptoms for a day. I didn't throw up, but, I had flu-like symptoms, and then, and then it went away. But again, even if it's 60% effective, why in the world the number's spiking so high? Now they're telling you They're telling you what? They're telling you now it's going to start to go down. Right? Now, that was the peak, it's going to go down. But why in the world should it peaked? Right? So they're going to say because it's less effective. Right? The shot doesn't last as long. So you need the booster shot. Right? Then it'll go back up to 90%. Right? But the ones, the easy answer is the ones that aren't getting the shot at all, they're the ones affected. They're the ones more affected. That's true. Right? That is 100% true. But still, I would ask the question, even with that, the numbers still should not be that high. Yeah. Why in the world, all of a sudden, these people that never got the shot, why are they getting it now? Why didn't they get it a year ago?
Exactly.
6 months ago. Right? We're talking the highest number since January.
Yeah, we're the same here in Canada.
They don't
numbers
have
are as high as last spring, yeah.
I would say, okay, you're opening everything up. You're letting ball games go on, this, that. Still, the numbers should not be that high if a lot of people got the shot. So the scientific community is great information that they have. Unbelievable. They're fallible.
The data, yeah.
They're absolutely fallible. And over here, this one mini microbe made them look really stupid. Right? As most people know, the first people that died from corona, they died of starvation. Why did they die of starvation? Because they did not handle them. They locked them up in a room. They didn't know what to do with them. They died. They died because they didn't treat them. They didn't, they starved. They didn't eat. A lot of these people. Right? Again, whether you think the numbers are spiked or not, doesn't really matter. Right? The point is the numbers are what they are. Still, we're not going to talk about corona, but, I'm just pointing out, the scientific community got a lot to learn. There's a lot of humility that should be just because of the miracles of the human body and what happens. A woman gives birth, for example, and when a child is born and you see 5, and I did this with all my kids, I checked out 5 fingers on both sides, 5 toes, they got a nose, they got a couple of ears, everything, everything's good. But what happens when, God forbid, baby comes out sick? Baby comes out with, mentally challenged or other issues. It's my bad luck, right? Genetics, other issues, whatever it is, but that's punishment for the soul. We're going to speak about this. That's all punishment for the person. Because when a baby's born, is the baby liable? No. Let's say that baby, that baby is born, his name is Adolf, right? Hitler himself, say, okay, let's kill him, right? Is he liable at that point? Nope. Can't do it. Right? Can't do it. Right? Same thing by Yishmael. That's where we learn that a person only judge where they're holding right now. Because the verse over there says, Basher Husham, that's where he is now. Hagar doesn't want to look over. Son's going to die. Right? So the angels, the Medrash says, let him die. Let him die. Look at all the people, all the Jews that are going to be killed in the future. Look at all the Jews, Yishmael, the children of Yishmael, the Arabs, the Muslims are going to kill Jews. So God says, angels, I got one question. One very simple question. Is this child right now, is he liable? Is he liable? No. He's not liable. If he's not liable, I can't kill him. But look what he's going to do in the future. God says again, put on my George Burns glasses. Is he liable? He's not liable. If his name was Adolf, you still can't turn him into a pretzel. Right? Plastic Man, see what he can do. Right? Hanging from a tree. Can't do that. Right? That's forbidden. Right? Infanticide, whatever it's called. Right? He can't do that because he's not liable. Right? So actually, see, the Torah is all interconnected. I didn't even think of any of this. Just all this stuff popped into my head. Now we're going to actually get into reincarnation. This is actually where it comes in. Right? So what did we say before? Back to our Mishna. See, so you thought I was going to take 17 episodes just to introduce. So that was a very good introduction. Only took an hour. Right? I was, a little bit generous. I let you talk a little bit. So again, we saw a skull. He saw a skull floating on the water. Right? Because you drowned others, they drowned you. What does that mean? Measure for measure. Whatever you did to someone else, measure for measure, you get paid back. But those who drowned you, those are going to be drowned eventually. In my language, makes no sense. Why? Just because you did something to someone else and they do it to you, you're liable. You 100%, you deserve to be drowned. You deserve to be killed, whatever it is. person came and killed you, why is he liable? So we answered that, right? Simple explanation is go back to Egypt. Why are they liable? God didn't tell them to do it. God didn't put a gun to their head, but they jumped and wanted to do it anyway. But they went beyond. So God said, okay, I have to punish them as well. Now, before I even, get to the first explanation, let's show God's mercy. There's even mercy over here when he destroys the Egyptians. Why? One of my videos on YouTube, I spoke about this, and it's in one of the parshas in the book of Exodus that I asked the question. As the Medrash, it says, the Talmud brings down that the Egyptians, when they see that they can't go further, there's light blinding them. Light for the Jews, they were able to get out of the water, and the Egyptians are blinded. So they made a comment, and they said, their God is fighting against us. What did that comment do? That comment allowed, first of all, they're going to get destroyed. That there's no question. But because they said God is fighting against them, so the Song of the Sea that we see, the Jews saw all the dead corpses on the land. What do you mean on the land? They should have been happening what happened to Bin Laden. Let the fish eat them. Throw them overboard, let the fish eat them. Why didn't they die in the water? They drowned in the water, that's true. But why wasn't that, food for the fish for, I don't even know how many years, tens of thousands of years, who knows? All these Egyptians that died, right? Why they get spit out of the land? Why they get spit out on the land? They get spit out on the land, the Medrash says, because they acknowledged God was fighting against them. Because they acknowledged God was fighting against them, they deserve to be buried. Now, think about that statement. If our worst enemy was doing something against us, and they realize, just as they're about to die, that really it's above nature, and God is really doing this. It doesn't save their life, but it gives, and as you're like taking the dagger and person's being killed, he deserves to be buried. This scumbag, my language, deserves to be buried. He deserves to have his flesh cut up. We're going to make burgers out of him. That's what he deserves. He deserves to be tortured, body destroyed, all these different things. He deserves to be buried. Look what the Egyptians did. The Egyptians caused 80% of the Jewish people not to get out of Egypt. 9 million Jews don't get out of Egypt because they didn't want to get out of Egypt. They suffered there. They did all these things. You want to tell me they deserve to be buried because they acknowledge that God is fighting against them? Give me the George Burns glasses, please. I would have zapped every single one of them. You take one of these tasers, bro, you're tasing me. You're right. And I'm going to do it again and again and again till basically your brain fries, right? Because that's what you deserve. Can't do that. Not only can't you do that, okay, that's a different issue. But the point is the fact that they acknowledge God's the one fighting against them. They deserve burial. That's a huge novelty. That is an absolute huge novelty. And I ranted on that for like 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes. That doesn't make sense logically, right? God has mercy for that, right? So yeah, it does make sense in a certain way, because when they're dying, when the Egyptians are dying, the angels want to sing praise to God. And what does God say? Can't do that. Why not? He says, my creation is drowning. You want to sing songs to me? You want to praise me? What are you talking about? Look what these people did. Look what they did over here. We want to praise your name because you destroyed them like they deserve to be destroyed. God says you're not allowed to.
I can't recall where I heard it the other day, but also that was likened to Abraham praying for the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, Abraham didn't have a bad outlook. He actually was concerned. Well, what if there is, so many righteous there?
Yeah, but that's a big misnomer, because what's he really praying for? In other words, if he knows everybody's evil, he knows they're going to get destroyed. Essentially, they deserve to be destroyed. If he knows they deserve to be destroyed and they're really bad, what's he praying for? Well, he's not praying that God save them. They're past being saved. right? What's he praying for? That even though they deserve to die, what about some people there that are actually righteous? Why should the righteous suffer because the majority of the people are doing the wrong thing? But don't make the mistake and say, Abraham's even praying for the people of Sodom. People of Sodom already have a Gezar Din. They're already going to be judged over here, right? They're already going to be judged to death. There's no question, right? That 100%, there's no question. So if that's no question, what's he praying for, right? He's praying for everyone else. He's praying for the sake of if there are any righteous people there. And if there are any righteous people, very good, right? Then they should be saved. But if not, fine. But you want to try and find 10 righteous people, that even if they were righteous, they shouldn't get punished with everyone else, right? Which is kind of scary because the Talmud does bring down that if there is, if the angel of death is running wild, then God forbid you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, you could also be killed. Now, you're going to tell me, or someone will say, but obviously it's not the wrong time. Because if I was supposed to die, right, if a person, not me, if someone was supposed to die, that's their time, right? You remember the movie with Warren Beatty, Heaven Can Wait? And he gets taken before his time, whatever. Okay, I don't know. I just get these movie, parables to give. Okay, we don't believe in dying before your time, right? It's not a Jewish concept. But what can happen is that if the angel of death is running wild and you're in a certain place, you may not have the merit that's able to protect you, and therefore you may die as well. Now, does that necessarily mean your time is up? Not necessarily, right? The angel of death can't just take you if God doesn't want you to, but you have to have protection. You have to have some sort of protection. If it's not your time to go, but you're caught up in other things, then hopefully that divine protection will help you or not, right? Famous story mentioned before, another football parable, right? A guy 20 years ago jumps in to save, 3 people are drowning, and he jumps in to save them. He drowns. I think one other person drowns. 2 of them, I think, got saved, or one of them got saved, but he didn't know how to swim. He didn't know how to swim. 27, 28 years old, but he didn't know how to swim. If you don't know how to swim, you don't jump in. Doesn't matter. It's best friend, your wife, this, that. You do something, try and save them. I took junior life saving when I was in camp. You try and save somebody, the first thing they're going to do is try to drown you, right? You have to know how to deal with them. Otherwise, they are going to drown you, right? But you can't jump in. So this guy gets upstairs after 120 years, right? And he says, God, why didn't you save me? I did him, I tried to save the person. It was for the sake of heaven. I didn't want reward over here. Person was drowning. God says, you transgress Coffman's 617th commandment. Don't be a moron. I didn't tell you to jump in. I didn't tell you to jump in if you don't know how to swim. He says, no, but what about my lofty thoughts? I did it for the sake of heaven, right? But what was the problem? Why didn't he get saved over here, right? So what's my theory? My theory would be he didn't have enough merit to get saved. In other words, sometimes the person can be in a terrible accident or whatever it is, but they have enough merit that gets used up. It's like having extra lives. Play Pac-Man, you get 10 extra lives, right? So imagine something happens, you lose 7 lives, but you still have 2 left, right? You still have 2 left over here, right? You still have 2 left over here. So what happens? So in our case, someone, God forbids, in a bad accident, or let's say they lose all their money and they're really supposed to die or something like that. So God does something. It's okay. I'm going to take off some of your merits. I'm going to take off some of your reward. Now, I'll take off some of your rewards, but I'll still let you live. So what happened to this guy? My guess, again, I could be totally wrong, but my guess would be he didn't have any merit over here. God had no purpose for him. Since God had no purpose for him, he let him drown. Right? He didn't save him. He could have saved him. Right? So maybe say, okay, take off some of the merit that he had, let him live. He didn't have any merit. He was out of lives. He was out of lives. That's what happened. He died. Game over. Right?
Rabbi,
you play a video game.
I know you don't watch TV.
Life, you die. It's over. Game over. That's what happened.
With all this splashing around in death you're talking about, I gotta tell you, I saw the last half hour the other day of Jaws 2. Not the first one, but the second one.
Yeah.
And, it
Right.
had more chomp. It was just, they end up frying the big great white, he bites on an electrical cable, but the point being,
Right.
yeah, when is it their time? And, yeah.
So the whole thing over here is that we have to have merits. And when the angel of death is running wild, and at that point, maybe you don't have any merit left, or you get judged anew and you're in trouble over here, you could die. Right? That maybe you don't have enough merit, to save you. So now, getting back now after an hour and 15 minutes, those who drowned you will be drowned eventually. Right? The question is, first of all, they have to be measure for measure, that we said. Right? But why does that person who's going to punish you, right? Why is he going to get punished now? So you're going to say, who said he's supposed to kill you? Right? Who says that's his job? Maybe someone else should do it, whatever. Right? So now we're actually going to get into explanations here. One explanation, right? This was all the way, by the way, of introduction. One explanation is that this person stole from others, right? The skull floated in the water. He stole from others, and he was drowned in a river. Measure for measure. Now, the thing is, he didn't have a say, right, about whether he's going to be killed, whether whatever he did wasn't in his hands to kill or be killed, right? Whose hands were it really in? Really, the rabbinical court says he should die, right? Now, normally, if a person steals, you don't get the death penalty. There's not a death penalty for that. For a Noahide, anything they do wrong, since it's universal, they will get a death penalty, right? They don't have to be warned over here. They could be killed for stealing, half a penny or even less, right? But it's not. But the point is, the person who died over here, he doesn't have a say, right? It's not in his hands to kill or be killed, right? But what happened? God brought it about, the person's demise, for what was done before. So now you want to tell me, well, he only stole. You have to have done something more than just stealing. Otherwise, he's not liable for the death penalty. Now, it could be he deserves to pay back whatever he stole, true. But it could be whatever he did before in a previous life. That's why we're going to get into reincarnation. Now he's got to pay this price. Now, how does that work? Now, the person has a good inclination, has a bad inclination. If you do the right thing, we uplift our soul, we uplift our body. Doing the right thing means I keep Torah mitzvahs, even as a non-Jew, right? Whatever applies to them. If I do the wrong thing, God forbid, what happens? I debase my body. I debase my soul. So therefore, a person's whole life, they're busy fighting against their evil inclination. Back and forth. They do the right thing, wrong thing, right thing, wrong thing. We get judged, whatever. In the end, person dies, and they get upstairs. God's going to judge everything they did. Every last thing. Oh, you watch Jaws 2? Anyway, what happens? What happens over here? The person gets judged. Now, could be that a person may not have to suffer, maybe suffer enough in this world, go straight to paradise. Mostly everyone else going to have to get fixed up, right? Going to have to go to hell, get fixed up. That's already a level, right? In order to get their soul fixed up. Other people may be given an opportunity. This is probably most of us today, probably made up of a reincarnated soul, can come back to this world 3 times, 4 times, maximum from what I understand. And God gives the soul an opportunity. The opportunity is come back to this world. Be in another body. Maybe you'll be in a rock, you'll get kicked around, you'll be in a wall, you'll be an animal, whatever it is. And you're given an opportunity to fix up what you messed up. Now, not everyone's given such an opportunity, but the soul most likely has been in this world before. Now, that being said, when the soul comes into the body, let's just say comes into the body, we'll make it easy, comes into the body, does not know what it's doing here. Right? It does not know what it's here to fix up. Now, if it's in a messed up body, right? We know that there have been, whether you hold by it or not, there's been facilitation of autistic kids, right? And they ask these kids all kinds of questions, obvious question, why are you in this body? Why are you doing this messed up body? So I spoke Lashon Hara, I did this, and I'm suffering for my sins, but it's a pure soul. It's a pure soul just in a messed up body, but it's there to get fixed up. There's no other reason. It doesn't make any other sense otherwise, unless you tell me, well, it's just a mistake, right? It's just my bad luck, right? Or whatever. But that we don't believe in that. Why? Because if it's about reward and punishment, child's not liable till they're 13, or at least till they're 20, right? There's no liability in this world. So if a child is born with leukemia, with any other bad disease, autism, whatever it is, or it happens later, or it happens over time, it's not their fault. Why isn't it their fault? It's not their fault because they're not liable. It's not punishment. Punishment for the soul. There has to be something else going on. Just like, God forbid, if a woman was pregnant and smoked crack while she was pregnant, what happens? The kid can come out deformed. Now, is that the kid's fault? Is that the kid's fault? No. It's not the kid's fault. It's reality, right? There are repercussions, certainly for what we do. So therefore, if there are repercussions, then what it means is that we can see it in a physical way. We can see it in a spiritual way, right? What's a spiritual way? Let's say a woman is married and she has a child from someone else before she got divorced, or she wasn't divorced, right? That child is what we call a bastard child, right? We call a momzer. Someone she's not allowed to be with. Doesn't necessarily have to be someone married, but someone she's not allowed to be with. She has a child. Now, that child can only marry someone of that same union, right? A similar union. They can't marry anyone else or a convert, right? So all the Jews in training, the JITs are going to say, what, we're second-class citizens? They're only allowed to marry us. Let's think about it. This soul right now is blemished. It's a blemished soul. So therefore, a soul that heard the Torah Mount Sinai, there's a pedigree, right? Jews have a pedigree. It's kind of like American Express, right? Membership has privileges, right? We have privileges. We're better. Woo! Anyway, I don't want to digress here. The point is we have a pedigree, right? What's the pedigree saying? Pedigree says that, there's certain people we're allowed to marry, certain people we're not allowed to marry, right? So if the soul is blemished, you're going to say, it can't marry a regular Jew. Right? Why not? Because that Jew has a different soul, has a quote unquote better soul. It's not blemished over here, right? Certainly can't marry a non-Jew, right? No question. So who's this soul supposed to marry, right? Who's this person supposed to marry? They're going to say, oh, I can marry a convert, but a convert's a Jew, right? A convert's considered a Jew. There's no question. But let's remember one thing. Does that convert have a pedigree? That, people will say, but isn't it true? My soul was on Mount Sinai. I heard the Torah being given. True. That's the only reason you're going to convert. It doesn't make sense otherwise. Why a non-Jew would want to convert, forget coming out of Christianity and all that. Walk into a synagogue on Sukkot, on the whole day of Sukkot, and you walk in the middle of the service where they're shaking the lulav, right? Here's my lulav, right? And they're shaking, you're shaking like this. They got the lemon on steroids, right? They got my hadassim, my myrtle leaves, my willows, and they're shaking it like this, and they're shaking it like that. They're gonna think you fall off you fell off your planet over here. You're off your cotton picking head. What are you doing over here? Now I sort of grew up with that, so I sort of know what it is. I didn't know what it meant, right? But I knew what it was. It wasn't something foreign. They're going to say, but my soul's on Mount Sinai. You're right. But what happened? Your soul got messed up. How does the soul get messed up? Into marriage, right? Into marriage or assimilation. So 1 generation, 2 generations, 5 generations, eventually that soul becomes a non-Jewish soul. Now, Dan the man's going to ask me, how does that work? It's Kabbalah, right? How can a soul go from male to female? I don't know. It's Kabbalah. But what happens is that soul becomes not Jewish. So even though that soul is on Mount Sinai, for better or for worse, through intermarriage assimilation, that soul isn't Jewish. If the soul isn't Jewish, then they have to go through conversion. Now, that means they have lack of a pedigree. The Ramchal in Derech Hashem takes it one step further. He says basically that non-Jews, since they don't have the same aspects of the soul as a Jew, because what does a Jew do? He's got Torah mitzvahs. So a non-Jew also does, to a certain extent, much less. He's got many less mitzvahs. So the whole purpose of Torah mitzvahs is what? It's for me to struggle in this world, for me to Izaneg al Hashem, to enjoy God's goodness in the world, but I have to keep what he says. So we have the ability to elevate ourselves, etc. Had it not been for Adam and Eve, we're getting real deep here. Had it not been for Adam and Eve, what would happen? We're at a much lower level. On a much, much lower level because they ate from the tree. So now we're trying to regain that, to get to the world where it was before Adam and Eve ate from the tree. Probably, when's the last time that was? By Mount Sinai. By the giving of the Torah. It comes on the evil inclination. Mr. S says, wait a minute, if they're on this high level, and they're on a level before Adam and Eve ate from the tree, that means my time is up, and he got them to sin with the sin of the golden calf. That's what he got them to do. So, we're in that state. Now, non-Jews, at the time of the Tower of Babel, could have joined. They could have joined him in part of the Jewish people. They didn't want to. They had a chance up until the giving of the Torah Mount Sinai. God had mercy. Right? It was only sealed at that point. So they want to be part of the Jewish people, good. They don't want to be part of the Jewish people, okay, that's their choice. They can stay a non-Jew, right, have a portion of the world to come as a Noahide, or they can convert. But if they convert, right, the Jewish people have an elevated soul. Now I'm going to say, oh, that's racist. You say what you want. Now, Jew and non-Jew don't have the same aspects of the soul. If they don't have the same aspects of the soul, when I do a mitzvah, it elevates my soul much more than a non-Jew. Much, much more. Right? So to that extent, it doesn't make me better because people are going to say, oh, you think you're better? Jewish people are chosen. Chosen means I have more mitzvahs to do. I have more obligations. That's why we say a blessing in the morning. Thank God I'm not a slave. Thank God I'm not a non-Jew. Thank God I'm not a woman. A guy will say that. Why? Not because of what a woman has to go through, but because all three have one thing in common. It has to do with the mitzvahs that they have. Women are not bound by mitzvahs, bound by. Now, there are plenty of things she has to keep. There's no question. Right? But she has less mitzvahs. Non-Jews have less mitzvahs. Slaves certainly have less mitzvahs, similar to a woman. So if that's the case, I'm not saying, oh, thank God I'm not a woman, and I'm a sexist, and I'm a misogynist, and I'm all this. I could be. Could be all three in one, right? But the reality is it's all about mitzvahs. They have less mitzvahs. Many, many less mitzvahs. So I have the opportunity. So if I have a lot more opportunity to do mitzvahs than non-Jews, doesn't that mean my soul should be elevated more? If my soul is elevated more to that extent, that means that this poor soul that went through this experience of being a mamzer can only marry someone at that level, right? Meaning someone who's either gone through the same thing or a convert, because where the convert came from, before they converted, their soul was not elevated, right? They're on a lower level because they don't have the same aspects of the soul. A little bit dicey here, right? As people are going to say, oh, that's racist, that's this. Again, non-Jews and Jews are not the same. They're not created the same. Our world to come looks different. Why? We have many more mitzvahs. Doesn't mean a non-Jew can't have a portion of the world to come, right? But again, they're keeping things that are universal. Universal according to the Torah. We got 50,000 more obligations than non-Jews. A non-Jew wants to take on those obligations, more than welcome. They are more than welcome to. They can go through the process of conversion. If they choose not to, it's also their choice, right? But don't say we are the same. Don't say this is discrimination. People are going to say same thing, about women. Oh, we discriminate on women, and all this. The reality is they have lesser mitzvahs. They have other things that they're busy with, raising a family and all that. That takes them away from other mitzvahs like learning Torah, for instance. They're busy taking care of the kids, taking care of the family. They don't have an obligation to sit and learn all the time, right? So if they're created differently biologically, most likely spiritually they also have a different, they have a different function. So great rabbi speaks to a bunch of feminists, and he asks them, there any difference between men and women? So these big time feminists say, no. So he goes, okay, let me ask the question again. Are there any differences? Anything you can think of, differences between men and women? He goes, I got one. Says women can have children. Men can't have children. That's a difference, right? There are biological differences. So don't you think it's not a stretch to say if there are biological differences, maybe there are actually spiritual differences? Whatever, it's a whole discussion we're not going to get into. But the point is, is that, they also get a portion of the world to come. They can't learn Torah. They can send their husbands to learn. They get married for that. They wait for their kids, coming home from school. They get married for that. They don't get the same merit as sitting learning Torah, but they have other obligations, right? They want to learn and they can. Great. There are certain things they have to know, right? They have the laws of Shabbos and Kashrus and, and other things. That means they have to sit and learn every second of every day. They got other obligations. Right. So I'm just pointing out that there are different things that different people have to do. Right. If God wanted everyone to be Jewish, they would have been. They could have joined at any time if they wanted to. But since it was closed, now they have to go through this thing that we call conversion. Very good. They want to be part of it. Great. They do what they're supposed to do. Unbelievable. They want to stay a non-Jew. They can stay a non-Jew. They can have a portion of the world to come. There's no question. But why should I say, and again, it has nothing to do with being politically correct, and most people know I'm not politically correct. Why is it that Jews should be equal to non-Jews? Now, it doesn't mean we're better. If a Jew, let's give an example. If a Jew does not keep Torah mitzvahs, he dates non-Jews, he eats non-Jewish food, he goes to their sporting events, he wastes his time watching C-League CFL, right? All right, that was already the third comment about that. So they're wasting time over here. Are they showing why God created the world? Why God created Jews to be like non-Jews? I don't think so. Right? That's not the purpose. If we're acting like non-Jews, we're probably doing a worse job. If that is the case, then you're right. Then there is no difference. But the only major difference is that a Jew is given a command to keep Torah mitzvahs. Since he's given a command to keep Torah mitzvahs, that differentiates us. Does a non-Jew have to learn Musar? No. I mean, it's what I've been doing over the last couple of years. Good question, right? But in general, do they have to learn all kinds of things? No, they don't have to. We do because it makes us who we are. Right? It changes who we are. I'm not saying that non-Jew can't learn ethics. It's a good thing, probably a moral imperative for them to learn ethics, right? But in general, they have to know what they're obligated in. That's 100% true. But the vast majority of things they're not obligated in. So if they're not obligated in, how can we say a Jew and a non-Jew should be the same? Oh, that's discrimination. We're saying a non-Jew can join at any time. We're the only religion that's universal, right? The Christians say if you don't believe in JC, you're going to fry in hell forever. Muslims say you don't believe in Muhammad and all this, you're all going to die anyway. Jews say if you want to have a portion of the world to come, keep what is universal. Keep the universal laws according to the Torah. You don't want to join the Jewish people, that's fine. You're not going to fry in hell forever. But you do have obligations, things that are universal, which you have to understand what universal means, according to the Torah. So if that's the case, how can anybody say we should be the same? Right? It's a 21st century total misnomer. Say, oh, you discriminate against non-Jews. Oh, you discriminate against women. But you don't, non-Jews, especially Messianics, are very good at taking things totally out of context. Right? We did a number of shows on Tanakh talk about that. Different things in the Talmud, right? And oral law, pedophilia, other things that make the Jewish people look really bad. We had a whole laundry list of things. I was like, well, I hope we have some good answers over here. But 99.9% of all the things were taken totally out of context. And it made makes the Jewish people look bad. Right? But if you understand what's behind it, now you also have to accept what the rabbis say, which they don't want to anyway. Right? But in essence, you have to see what's behind it. Once you see what's behind it, it's a totally different thing than picking and choosing, which we've spoken about many times. But if you admit that's what you're doing, I don't have an issue, or I have less of an issue. But if you're going to cherry pick certain things, I say, look, the Talmud says, why, if my ox gores a non-Jew's ox, for instance, right? I hit your car, God forbid. I hit your car. I hit a non-Jewish car, a non-Jew's car. I don't have to pay, right? Talmud says I don't have to pay. Now, you will have to pay anyway because of law of the land. But in general, the Talmud says I don't have to pay. Now you're going to say, but if you hit a Jew's car, you have to pay, right? And if you were negligent or you did it on purpose, there are different things to pay. Whatever it is, true. So why do we? So what's the deal? I can just mess up a non-Jew's car. I can do whatever I want. No, you can't do whatever I want. But what's the reason? What's the reason? So one reason Talmud gives, and there could be many myriad reasons, but I'm just going to throw this out there just to make sure people understand. Comes on, the Talmud said, you know what? Non-Jews don't even keep the laws that they're supposed to keep. Right? The majority of non-Jews do not keep the Noahide laws. Because the non-Jews don't keep the Noahide laws, and they're universal. They're not things they wouldn't have figured out. They're universal. If they're universal according to the Torah, what does the Talmud say? We have a right to uproot their money. We have the right to make their money ownerless to a certain. Doesn't mean I can steal from them. Stealing from them is a difference of opinion. We hold it's totally forbidden. Right? 100% is totally forbidden. But if God forbid a Jew hits a non-Jewish car, why technically are you exempt? Because they didn't even keep the laws they were supposed to. Because so you're gonna say, well, so why should I have to pay money? Maybe you were negligent, maybe. Right? Maybe the person was negligent. You're gonna say, oh, that's discrimination. That's terrible. But if they don't keep moral, universal laws, right, then I'm not saying anything can be done to them. Right? But if someone causes damage to them, that means their money is like it's ownerless. What? You're gonna say, wow, that's extreme. I don't know. Something that is universal, that you're not allowed to keep, you're not allowed to do. How can they think it's okay? Right? We just had something, a tragic incident in Denver that a yeshiva student was killed, 19-year-old boy was killed, and there were four, punks. That's what I'm going to call them. That's what they were, four punks, 18, 19 years old. And, you don't think they understood killing is wrong? Killing a Jew is okay, right? They're going to say it's less than human, maybe like the Nazis, totally brainwashed by a society. That's not going to butter the biscuit, right? They're liable. How can they think in their warped mind? Yeah, how in their warped minds can they think, we have the right to kill a Jew? I mean, they were chasing him, whatever, and killed him in his yeshiva, for goodness sakes. I mean, it's a horrific thing. But, how can they, what are they going to claim? Mentally unstable? Maybe. Right? But the irony is, the trigger, the one who pulled the trigger, he gets 25 years, get out of parole after 5. They killed him in cold blood, no question about it. There's nothing to talk about. Nothing to talk about. So you can say, where's the justice? Why? Okay, we don't have answers here. We'll get, we'll speak, we're in the middle just of the introduction of speaking about reincarnation. Right? The point over here is that if it's something universal, and that's something they know, how can they justify it? Right? A better case would be someone who pulls the plug. We spoke about that before. Someone who pulls the plug on someone else. They're going to say that's mercy. Right? That's mercy killing because the person's suffering. Right? I had a relative that, that was at the mourner's house, and one of their kids says, yeah, our father was suffering so much, we cut off his pacemaker. And I was like, cut off his pacemaker? That's murder. We didn't want to see him suffer anymore. So I asked the doctor at the time, the person was going to die anyway. But the problem was he probably would have died in 6 hours, 8 hours, maybe 10 hours. Cut off the pacemaker, died in 2. Hastening someone's death where it's forbidden is murder. Now, they could be deluded by their own society. And they could say, well, he was suffering. He was going through suffering. We didn't want him to suffer anymore. Now, no one should ever be in such a situation, right? That might be true. But at the end of the day, Judaism does not look at that any different than if you took a gun and shot him in the head. Or you threw him over a cliff. We can do what the Greeks and the Romans did. When parents got older, took him up to a mountain, said, Mom, Dad, it's been real. Like put him in a nursing home, said sayonara. That was it. Right? So that's I'm not going to say that's 100% permitted, but it's not, they're not doing something, they're not strangling them. They're not killing them. They're making it a lot harder for them to survive, but that's not murder. In this case, you pull the plug where it's forbidden, that's murder. No difference. No difference whether he did that or clubbed him over the head or shot him in the head. No difference. But, but what is society going to say? The person was suffering. Even if they would have come out of it, they would have been a vegetable. They would have been this. They don't have quality of life. So I would tell these stupid doctors, who are you to say what quality of life is? According to you, quality of life is sitting back in my lounge chair, sipping a pina colada, watching the CFL, watching Jaws 2. That's quality of, I'm just picking on you. That's quality of life, right? That's considered quality of life. Really? So we hold, even if a person thinks about doing the mitzvah, but they can't do it because, they're incapacitated, they get credit every single second. They get credit. That's not worth anything? Oh, you can't prove that. Oh, I don't believe that. Oh, but you believe sipping a pina colada is quality of life. Where do you define what quality of life is? And certainly, why did doctors get to decide that? Why in the world do they get to decide that? I mean, society is totally cracked, totally 100% messed up where their values come from. We just got through, the Olympics in Tokyo. It's so messed up because I like these sports analogies, but it's so messed up. You got men dressed up as women competing in women's sports. That's insanity. That's insanity. Teaching 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, how do you know that you're not attracted to the opposite sex? How do you know you're not, you're attracted to the same sex? This, that. That's insanity, right? You can say, wow, you got to be open-minded. You got to expose them, right? You got to expose them to these things. So I remember when I was 15, when I was in camp, I had a fellow camper, tell me that, you have to experience everything once, right? That was his theory. You have to experience everything once. So I said, that's not true. I said, why not? I said, I'll give you an example. I said, okay, go outside the bunk, take about 100 steps backwards. He says, okay. I said, then run as fast as you can into the bunk wall. He says, I'm not going to do that. He said, I'm not going to do that. I said, you probably break every bone in your body if you do it right. I said, if I know that's bad, I don't have to do it. I don't have to bang my head against the wall till it bleeds to know it's bad. I understood what the person meant, right? You don't want to lose out on life. You have to experience this, experience that. Not everything you have to experience, so where are the definitions going to come? Who in the world is going to give a universal definition that we should all hold by that's called quality of life? Certainly not doctors. Because the way doctors see it, you're basically blood and tissue, right? And body parts. That's essentially what you are. Now, the question is, how do they function? How do they function in life? Oh, you have spasms, you can't do this. Okay, well, we'll try and treat it this way. Oh, you can't do this, and a person's incapacitated. I knew somebody that had a stroke a number of months ago. Just throw this out there also. Had a stroke a number of months ago, and it was so bad, couldn't play his favorite game, Sudoku, right? Because, I don't know, something affected the brain, and the person realized not going to be able to live, even with all the rehabilitation, not going to be able to live the way they used to. And they decided, you know what? I'm just not going to eat. I'll eat minimally, I'll drink minimally. And basically what happens is when you do that, you'll die. The body will just give up. So basically, person was living at home and, hospice was dealing with him. He got weaker and weaker, essentially. And eventually, had to go to the hospital and never get out of the hospital and he died. However many weeks later. Now, something like that. Now that's indirect, right? That's not putting a gun to your head. That's not, Mr. Kevorkian and shooting yourself up with a potion that's going to kill you. We're not talking about that, right? Someone does something passive. If it's passive, it's not murder, right? It's not suicide. Talmud tells a number of cases, person could have got medication. He didn't. Because he didn't, he ended up dying, but that's a grama. That's only causative. It's indirect. If it's something that's more direct, that's a different issue. But what was my point? This person died, he was already dead many months before because now he's under a different reality. The different reality is I'm not going to be able to function the way I used to. I can't eat the same, right? I'm not going to, it's going to take a lot of rehabilitation. And what happens is when people get sick and they get seriously sick and there's a lot of rehabilitation, a lot of effort, if you don't have the attitude you want to get better, you'll die. You'll just atrophy. I know someone also had a major stroke. They just refused to do anything and they died. They gave up. That is proven scientifically, right? That 100% is proven scientifically. Now, this person himself decided, well, I'm not going to have quality of life. The quality of life that he was used to. Okay, right? That's such a reality. But even with that reality, he said, you know what? Life isn't worth living. Had a good life, lived more than 80 years. Okay, now it's my time to go. Right? Obviously, it's not a Jewish attitude, even though this person was Jewish. It's not a Jewish attitude. Right? The Jewish attitude is you live and do whatever you can. Right? As many mitzvahs as you can. You don't know how long you're going to be here for or whatever. It has nothing to do with quality of life. Doesn't mean you don't suffer, but what's the final straw over here? It's kind of silly, It's the most fun thing this person does is play Sudoku, and now we can't play Sudoku. Life is over. Life is meaningless. I can't do the same things I used to do. Woe to me. Life is over. Right? So something like that, again, it's indirect. Right? But this person has a false impression, or let's say better, a wrong impression about what life is all about. Because to him, life is about playing Sudoku. Life's about being able to eat whatever he wants, when he wants. But now he can't do that. Right? And before that, a person had throat cancer, so had to eat through a tube. Imagine someone who enjoys eating and enjoys good food. Right? That's the ultimate punishment. Can't eat, or you can't eat as much. But in this case, couldn't eat anything. Right? You can only eat whatever went intravenous. So can't eat a burger, can't eat a steak, can't eat any of these things. That might be worse than death because that's all the person has. Right? Someone who's used to eating certain things, going to restaurants, no pizza, no, whatever. They're used to certain things, to enjoy the body, that the body enjoys or whatever. In the end, when you can't do it anymore, life's just not worth living. What? I can't eat pizza? I can't, I remember seeing a commercial. There was an antacid commercial. It says, do you want to eat that pepperoni pizza, and have no after effect? Take this one antacid. They don't say you shouldn't eat it. They say, no, we're going to give you everything. You can eat it. You don't have to worry about heartburn. Just take this one antacid, right? I should be just like a walking commercial for different things, selling different people's products. Any case, I don't want to digress here. Point is, God forbid someone should give something up. They don't want to give something up, right? Doesn't matter how negatively it's going to affect you. I got a little green pill. That green pill is going to allow me to take it. That's going to be beautiful, right? I get the best of both worlds. Survey says, right? Not true, right? Totally not true. So how do we define quality of life? Right? Certainly not the way doctors define it. Certainly not the way the secular world defines it. Right? It has to be quality of life according to what the Torah says. Right? And what is life? Life is all about learning. Life is all about doing mitzvahs. To the extent where even if I think about doing the mitzvah and I can't do it, but I really want to do the mitzvah, I get credit. So imagine even a person in that state. Let's say they're so weak, they can't put on tefillin. There's some, it's just going to hurt them too much or whatever. But they have the desire to do it, and they can't put it on, so they get credit. They can even do it when they're very sick to get credit for something, even if they can't physically do it. Right? That's what it means. Kol neshama, kol neshima. Right? The breath itself is life. Every second we can be thinking in mitzvahs. I can be thinking in Torah. To get credits, to get reward, even if I can't do the action itself. That's not quality of life. Yeah. Doctors are going to say, what's that worth? That's not something physical. That's not something tangible. You'd rather be kicking back with a pina colada, wouldn't we all? Right? If it's a good pina colada, like here, it's been very, very hot. Who would want a strawberry daiquiri, on a nice hot day? Where when I go up north, it's like 105 in the shade. I gave a class on Wednesday, so I was getting ready to leave. It's like 6:15 at night, and it still feels like you're in an oven, right? So I said, "Hey, who turned on the heat? What happened with the heat over here?" It was very hot also, where I live, but okay. There's a difference between 30, 31 to like 37, 38. It's a little bit of a difference. Regardless of that. So where do we have the definition? Where do we have the definition of what quality of life is? Right? Now, if all you have to do is see billboards, listen to the news, see commercials, they're going to tell you, especially on Super Sunday, you have all these Coke commercials, Bud Light, right? You have these Bud Bowls and all that. I remember back in the day, and what does it do? It wants to convince you, oh, I'm thirsty. I'm going to have a Bud Light. I'm going to go have some soda. I'm going to, whatever it is. Whatever it is, it's all about advertising, right? But who says, it used to be, a cool guy smoking Camel cigarettes. We all know, obviously, how bad cigarettes are. But again, it's the persona, right? It's what it looks like. Oh, I could have that life, but you're addicted to tobacco. Maybe it's just, it's not the picture, whatever, right? Whatever it is. Point is that we get brainwashed over here, thinking that, oh, I'm going to be happy if I have the cigarette. I'm going to be happy if I have this drink. I mean, you might be, but that's not what life is. That is not what life is. So their definitions of happiness and all that are just a very skewed way of looking at the world. Basically, it's saying, just like the prophet says, eat, drink, and marry, lest tomorrow I die. So let me enjoy it. Let me watch my ball games. Let me, see Jaws 2. Let me, whatever. Let me see all these things. I'll get a little bit of enjoyment, when life is down or whatever. Because I want to enjoy. Why shouldn't I enjoy life? But again, what is life all about? So a lot of people in the month of Elul, a lot of Jews read the book Path of the Just. Very hard book to go through, but, he says the whole point is to show my obligation in this world, right? That God wants you to enjoy this world. He's giving of himself. If he's giving of himself, it has nothing to do with him, right? It has to do with how he wants us to attach to him. But it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of hard work, takes a lot of effort. But that's the real world. The real world is understanding we make mistakes, understanding we have to be better, understanding we have to change. That's the real world, makes us who we are, makes us more moral, makes us think in the right path. That's better 100%, even on a hot day, sitting back and sipping my pina colada. That might give you a certain level of enjoyment, but that's a false reality. It's an absolute false reality over here. And we forget, right? We forget. We see all kinds of tragedy, all kinds of difficult things. And a person says, life is too heavy. Life is too hard. All these things. Now, life is hard. So the Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, the Ramchal says, you're here in this world to work. You're here in this world to toil. God doesn't say it's going to be easy. He says, I made this world in a certain way. Either you're going to grow, God forbid, spiritually. Either you're going to grow spiritually or you're going the other way. Right? There's no mediocrity over here. So that being the case, I have to work hard. That's what this world is. Not about sipping pina coladas. Not about what doctors think in general. Life is about and what quality of life is. We don't care what the doctors say. Right? It's irrelevant. We'll go to doctors when we're sick. Their personal opinions on life, totally irrelevant. Right? In many ways. So the point is, quality of life is defined by what the Torah wants. Right? By what the Torah wants for us. That is, that is quality of life. Does that mean life's going to be easy? Does that mean that we're going to be given things on a silver platter? No. We're going to work. We got to strive. We have to make efforts, and we may fail. We may make mistakes, but God's the one calling the shots here, right? He's the one telling you how to get close to me. He's the one giving you all the information. So now we have to put the pieces together, and we have to be able to do it. Now that's a lot easier said than done, right? It's work, right? Life is work. It's hard. A marriage, it's hard. Most marriages today, unfortunately, end up in divorce. And sometimes they end up in divorce because they just don't want to work. A marriage is like a flower. You take a flower or a plant, you don't water it, give it all the sun in the world, it will wilt. It will die. It's something that you need to work on, right? But today we live in the tissue generation, not the Teflon generation, the tissue generation, because we're very weak. You don't like something in your spouse, fix it. Do this, do that, do the other thing. They don't want to, it's too hard. Other issues. So a person can say, what do I need this for? I got enough aggravation in life. Some people, change their spouse as much as they change their shirt, unfortunately. Think they'll find happiness this way or that way or the other way. Problem is, baggage that they have, carries over. So a person may never find that, find that happiness. The end result is that a person has to put in the effort, right? Whatever you do, even a person has a secular job, you try and be the best you can be, right? You work hard, all the more so, all the more so in Torah, but it's hard, and just because a person goes on this path, then the man knows you go on this path. Is that a guarantee for financial success? Absolutely not.
No, not at all.
Anyone needs any CG work, you go to him. He's the man, right? But the point is that there's no guarantee, right? Anyone who, is a Jew in training, or anyone, is Baal Tshuva, comes back to Judaism, think God's going to give it to them on a platter, think again, right? You're going to say, but it doesn't have to be that hard. But you know what? It's kind of like give another parable here. You have toothpaste, right? Now, when the toothpaste goes down, before you get another tube, what do? You go to the bottom, you're like, you're squeezing that you want to get your money's worth.
Very
right?
last drip, yeah.
Lasts for a while, but still, at $3, $4, whatever it is, you want to get your money's worth. So you're squeezing that last drop. So a lot of times, that's what God does with us. Something that's so hidden inside of ourselves. God says, I'm going to use you like a tube of toothpaste, right? You can quote me on that. And God is going to squeeze you and squeeze you, in order to get out whatever qualities he wants.
Wow.
Now, we may think, come on, I don't have this in
Too
me.
much. There's nothing left.
Right? I don't have this in me. It's not possible. So what does God do? Sometimes he'll put us in situations where a person has a certain dormant character trait, and it hasn't come out. And it's only going to come out in a certain way. So what does God do? So God orchestrates it in a certain way. He orchestrates it in a certain way. You go through certain things. And then all of a sudden, this character trait comes out to the forefront. Why does it come out to the forefront? Because there's other things you had to go through. Right? I'll give an example of my own life. Right? Most people know my story that, I lost all my money. When I lost all my money, I ended up going to South America, to Chile. From Chile, I went to Lakewood, New Jersey. Lakewood, New Jersey, I came back to Israel. And I've been in Israel now the last 13 years. Right? Starting 13 years. Now, I was on 2 continents in 3 years. Didn't make a whole lot of sense. And I still don't have any reason whatsoever what I was doing in Chile. Those dots I haven't connected. Right? But when I was looking for a job in Jewish outreach in Lakewood, when I was in New Jersey, I didn't find one, but then I got involved dealing with converts. Now, dealing with converts, not necessarily my specialty, right? More of my specialty was working with Jews. Don't necessarily know that much about Judaism. But I had my own learning center 20 years ago, right? I had my own learning center 20 years ago. I wanted to build this whole thing, and it got cut out from under me. Okay. So now looking back, I think I mentioned this last week or a few weeks back, now connecting the dots, I see I probably wouldn't have been as successful. doing that. But all these things that happen, one thing after another, got involved with converts, potential converts, got involved with Noahide. Now all of a sudden I got this opportunity, which I'm killing myself to do, and hopefully it's going to get off the ground in a big way. So in the meantime, with all that experience, it's a whole different ball game now. Now God's going to say, okay, you have X, Y, and Z going for you, but you know what? It's not enough. You want to do something, I don't want you to fail over here, because I think you would fail in a miserable way. So I'm going to do things in a different way. And then sometime later, I'm going to give you another opportunity. However, it's going to, work itself out. We'll see. Right. But I'm going to give you another opportunity. Now, through that other opportunity, am I much more equipped to deal with many myriad things I'm going to have to deal with doing this? 100%. Now, would I wish other things didn't happen? Also true. Right, but now if you sort of connect the dots, and I'm not saying this is the reason for anything, just my own speculation makes me feel good, makes me vent a little bit, and that is that without any ego here, what's God telling you? You wouldn't have been successful, right? You wouldn't have been as successful way back when, but now it's a different ball game. Now you have a lot more knowledge. Now you have a lot more life experience. Now you've done a lot of different things. You have a lot more connections. You're not on your own. You got other people trying to help over here. It's a different world, right? It's a totally different world over here. Now, is that the reason I had to go about a whole roundabout thing in order to do that? Because the only thing that happened in Lakewood basically was, that besides learning how to do real estate a little bit was, doing these things with converts, giving classes, for potential converts and how it developed and all that. Now, I'm not going to be so bold to say, okay, I had to leave Israel, to go to Chile, to go to the States, to come back to Israel in order to do that, and then 13 years later, embark on this project. Where's the logic? Where's the logic in that? So you might say, well, it's wishful thinking, maybe, right? But again, if you connect the dots, the one thing I do see is clear. The one thing is that even in my own mind could very well be, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have been as successful. Could be, right? Could very well be, right? And I needed this other experience in order to do it in a certain place, certain people that are there, whatever. And, it had to be there, instead of somewhere closer to my house. Okay? Right? Was it something I would have planned on? No. Was it something I would have thought of? No. Right? But God has his ways. So, put me in many, many different situations, over the years that makes this project fit like an absolute glove. Now, again, how it's going to manifest itself and where it's going to go, we'll see. Right?
We're praying for you, Rabbi.
We're putting our best foot forward. I'm, working like a dog to do it. So, we'll see. We'll see where it all goes. But in the end, we have to realize we don't understand why things happen. Right? And this is what this mission is really saying, which we haven't really even dealt with, right? Because we're definitely going to have part 2 next week. Right? But the idea of measure for measure, and then other people will cause damage to the person that was supposed to have damage caused to them, right? Essentially, that doesn't make sense either why they're in trouble, because they're really doing God's will. But God has many messengers. This person took it on his own, okay, right? But people make the mistake, and they think they deserve to understand why there's such a thing as measure for measure. Right? We believe there's measure for measure. Now, in our puny brains, and they're puny, our puny brains cannot fathom. There are many things that we do not see in our own lives, and we'd be foolish to think we can, right? But there are many things in our own lives that we could say, okay, it's measure for measure, etc. But where is it? It's not logical. Certain things, again, maybe if we would analyze ourselves on a daily basis, what I tell people to do, before they go to sleep, think about what you wanted to accomplish during the day. Think about what you accomplished. Think about how you interacted with others, etc. How did I pray? How did I say blessings? All these different things. Comes to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, I know what to work on. Very easy. Very easy to know what to work on. Very hard to look in the mirror, though. Very, very hard to look in the mirror. No question. That being the case, that being the case, how can we say, or even demand, I want to know the measure for measure. God's ways are hidden. We're living hiddenness within hiddenness. We want clarity. No, there's nothing worse than being in doubt. And I'm going to speak about this a lot because, I've been in contact with a lot of people, and not only does this topic bother them, but things that they go through that are so hard, and so difficult, especially being a Jew in training, even for Noahites going in the right path. They also have all kinds of trials.
Oh, the opposition sometimes is, off the chain.
Everybody has all kinds of trials. But you know what everyone wants to know? Everybody wants to know why. They want to know why. And there's nothing worse than being in doubt. That I understand. And if God would have come to me in a dream and I would have known it was him, and he said, listen, I'm going to take away your money and I'm not going to kill you. You deserve to die, but I'm not going to kill you. But I promise you, in 20 years, you're going to benefit over here in a major way. Now, if that happened to me or to anyone, okay, but you have to go through a 20-year odyssey. 20-year odyssey before you're going to see the fruit of this. Maybe it's going to take longer, right? But let's say, okay, so a person understands it's finite. It's only going to last a certain amount of time. 20 years is a long time, right? But let's say it's going to be 6 months, going to be a year, whatever. But a person has, it's answered. So a person feels a lot better. They know they're not just being tossed around for no reason, right? But what's the whole point? The whole point is to work on our emunah, to work on our belief in God, to understand there's a purpose, there's a rhyme and a reason. Now, does that mean he's going to show it to us? No. Does that mean we even deserve it? No. Does that mean we should try and figure it out? You drive yourself nuts. God does not want you to drive yourself nuts. I can drive everybody nuts. You can probably drive everybody nuts. Nobody cares. Nobody cares because God wants you to function in a regular way, in a normal way. Now, does that mean we shouldn't do tshuva? No. Does that mean we have plenty more to work on? We have a lot to work on. But we want answers. We absolutely want answers. And it's hard when we don't know. I can tell you the worst thing for me personally was that if you're given a little bit of success and you taste a little bit of success and then it gets taken from you, then you ask the question, why should this person be doing this? I got more credentials than that. Why can this person, this isn't fair. Why did this happen? Life's not about what's fair or not. Life is about what God dictates, right? So I can tell you with lack of emunah on my part, it bothered me. It bothered me to no end. Why? Because here I have a certain level of talent, right? Certain level of talent. I can help others. I can give classes, this and that. I saw success. Definitely saw success. And then it was taken. Then I had to do other things, whatever, and it bothered me to no end. If I would have just said, okay, you're the one in charge, this before I learned duties of the heart. If I would have just said, even though I believe this, but I would have said it over and over again, okay, you're the one in charge. You're the one that caused this. For whatever reason, I don't know. I want it back. I want the ability to do what I love to do. And you're the one in charge. Now, I think things might have turned out differently if I would have said that, right? Even if I would have thought a little bit while it's being tossed around in the wind. Regardless of that, that's what we have to say. We have to say, as my Rebbe said many times during Corona, we have to say, God, you're the one in charge. You're the one who runs the world, right? I pray every day. You want this thing to go up north? You're the one who's going to do it. It's not going to be me. I said, I just want to show you self-sacrifice. This is what I'm willing to do, right? I'll go up there twice a week, leave early in the morning, come back late at night, etc. Meet people, speak to people, give a class, this, that, whatever it takes. I want to show self-sacrifice, and hopefully, that'll open up doors. Right? Not the only reason. That's not the only reason I'm doing that. The point is, though, that either God's going to bless it or he won't bless it. right? So, so I pray every day. This, hopefully it's going to get blessed and it's going to move and whatever. And if it takes longer, it takes longer. You make it more hard, you make it more harder. Okay, right? But I'm not going to stop putting my best foot forward over here, right? But at the end of the day, even if something gets taken away and it's something that you love, right? You have to realize, okay, one door closes, other doors open, right? I've seen this with a number of people. Certain things they've been slammed on, totally slammed on, but other doors open that weren't open before, that weren't open 6 months ago, weren't open a year ago. Right now, I'm not saying a person has to go through that for that to happen, but there's a reality, right? The reality is doors can open, doors can close, right? But if they close, it doesn't mean you're stuck. It doesn't mean, well, there's no hope and whatever. Doors can certainly open, right? So, I had a number of doors shut, no question. And then like this other door opened, and like I said, getting involved with non-Jews wouldn't have been necessarily what I was thinking of, per se. Okay, if it's my personality, if it's other things, very good. But it wouldn't have been something I necessarily would have thought of. Again, did I have to go through this whole roundabout thing to get to that? I don't know. I don't know. It's part of the plan. Whatever it is. But there are other doors that get open. Things are not just slammed shut and you're stuck. Right? We have to understand, we have to believe there's a God and he runs the world. Right? And he's what we call it here, as we say here in Israel, the big boss. Right? He 100% is the big boss over here. He can change things at the bat of an eyelash. Absolutely the bat of an eyelash. Right? Things that we go through, we say, wow, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with that? And a lot of times we worry. And we have, person understands they have an electric bill to pay, something, whatever it is, 2 days, electric company says we're shutting you off. You're going to come up with $500, $600, whatever it is, to pay the bill. You have no idea where it's coming from. Then something out of nowhere comes, someone helps, this, that, and it gets taken care of. Right? Now, it might not look pretty, but it gets taken care of. So let's say, God sends the money in a different way. Right? So God says, you know what? I just want you to remember I'm still here. Yeah, but I only had 2 days to pay the electric bill. I'm sitting there worried and, what's going to be and this and that. And God says, I told you don't have to worry. I'm the one in charge. I'm the one calling the shots. Okay, I squeezed you. I made you pray better. You learned something from it. Very good. Now I'm going to help you. Now I'm going to help you. Okay, but you're going to tell me it wasn't pretty. Again, I need this money months ago, this, that. Okay, I'm doing it now because I want you to work on your emunah. I'm doing it now because I want to help you in other ways. But you would have thought I need this money, whatever. So what's the bottom line? Bottom line is there are a lot of things that we worry about. And again, person got an electric bill to pay in a number of days. Okay, you're going to work hard, try and figure out how you're going to do that. But the reality is you have to say the mantra over and over again. I'm going to put my best foot forward, but God, you're in charge. You are the one in charge. You are the one calling the shots.
Yeah, learning curve.
Right?
Yeah,
that's the bottom line, and we can't forget that. There's an X factor, a major, major X factor, over here. And the Avos Levavo says, as it brings down the duties of the heart and Shar B'tachon, right? It says in the gate of belief and faith in God. He says, you know what? My putting my best foot forward doesn't mean anything. I have to do it. That's my obligation. But putting my best foot forward could come up with a goose egg. I could come up with nothing. But that's my obligation because it has nothing to do with us. Right? In other words, God's going to say, but you have to work. You can't just rely on me. Right? You have to put your best foot forward. So good. Is that a guarantee for success? Not a guarantee for success. There are people that have the greatest intention. I know somebody wanted to go into Jewish outreach, and they have the greatest intention, but he didn't have the personality. He didn't have the personality to do it, so it didn't go. Right? Went into other things. Still has guests along, whatever, but he didn't have that. It wasn't supposed to go for whatever reason. Right? Now, a person could keep trying. God can say, nope, it's not going to happen. Nope, it's not going to happen. Okay, but
it's never.
We have to realize that all the effort we put in does not mean we get the end result. That's not what it means. Right? So a person can say, well, I keep praying. I'm still not getting answered. So what's the answer? You keep praying. You keep working on it.
Do we determine to change direction
God
at
has
some point?
mercy. God has mercy. Even the Talmud says, even if there's a sword on your throat, now a person may die, but God can have infinite mercy even at that point. So God can help at any time. Things can change overnight. 100% overnight. And I've definitely seen it.
Yeah.
In different ways. Now, does that mean you might not suffer in other ways for a certain amount of time? Could very well be. But it doesn't mean we give up over here. It's very easy to get beaten down in life and just give up. Right? Very, very easy. Woe to me. This is bad. This is hard. Getting slammed here, slammed there. And I'm working like a dog. And I'm trying to do the right thing. And I'm watching my eyes. I'm watching this and I'm watching that. So why am I getting tossed around? Why in the world am I getting tossed around? Right? What's the answer? We don't know. But it doesn't matter. Right? It doesn't matter because you're still going to pray. You're still going to ask for what you need. You're still going to put your best foot forward regardless if the answer is no. Why? Because the evil inclination will tell you to give up. God's saying, I still want to squeeze you. I want you to pray better. I want you to work harder. When we pray and we work hard, it doesn't go for naught. In heaven, it definitely does not go for naught. We might not see the end results in this world that we want. We may not see it. Right? God may just say, no, it's not good for you. I'm not giving it to you. Right? But in the end, doesn't mean we give up. Moshe Rabbeinu, how many prayers did he pray to try and get into the land? Right? Hundreds. And God finally told him to stop. Right? But, he didn't give up. He didn't give up even though God himself said, the deal is sealed over here. You're not getting it. And he kept praying, and he kept praying, and he kept praying. Right? So same thing by us. Why should we give up? Why should we give up on what we want? Now, does that mean we're always going to get it? No. Could it happen a roundabout way, number of years later? Maybe. Could it happen in a month, 2 months, 6 months? Who knows?
10 years, 20,
but
50.
we have to put our best foot forward. Because if we don't put our best foot forward, nothing's going to happen. Unless, as the Vilna Gaon says, you rely on God for everything. You don't go to doctors. You don't put your best forward for anything. So God will take care of all your needs. But unless you're on that level, right, we have to do exactly what the Avos level says. We have to put our best foot forward. Now, putting your best foot forward is no guarantee. But even if it's no guarantee, I still have to do it. Right? But someone's going to say, but I want to know. I want to understand. We can't. We're human. Yeah, sometimes God is going to throw us a proverbial bone. And he'll show us certain things. Right? And in the end, he'll show us certain things. And we're going to say, wow, I was so worried before. What was I worried about? God took care of my needs. Okay. I mentioned to a great rabbi once, I had money come in, but I need that money 2 months ago. So he said, that's what it means. God gave you the money in the exact right time. I was like, but that wasn't the right time. He goes, no, it was. For him, it was the right time. You had to get squeezed for whatever reason. Right, but the money came in exactly the time that he wanted you to have it. And he wanted you to work on other things. Right? We don't always see it. But we are creatures of nature. Certainly creatures of habit as well. And what do we say? We say like the Mishna says, which we didn't even really deal with so much, and that is we want to know the measure for measure. We want to understand the measure for measure. And the answer is, in this world, you may never see it. You may get a glimpse, you may think, we don't know for sure. Some things I think are more obvious, right? But there are many things we're never going to understand. We have to remember, we're living in a world of Hester b'toch Hester panim. We're living in a world of hiddenness within hiddenness. If it's hiddenness within hiddenness, and God himself he tells Moshe Rabbeinu, no one can see my face and live, not even you, then how can we expect thousands of years later to get that level of clarity? I understand the worst thing is to be in doubt, to have any doubts. I understand that is the worst thing to be in. But at the same time, who are we to think God owes us to show us the measure for measure?
Yeah, of course.
We're nobody. right? In my language, we're an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. I live in a town, in a city, in a state, in a country, in a continent, on a planet, in a galaxy, right? If you can read these words, you don't need glasses, right? Spaceballs, right? Another reference, right? But the point is, we're an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. We're very small. Very small in the bigger scheme of things, right? It comes along the Nefesh Chaim, and he says, famous student of the Vilna Gaon, of Elijah Vilna, more than 250 years ago, right? Head of the Volozhin Yeshiva says our actions matter. Oh, you think? I'm an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. Our actions totally matter, right? So that gives us oomph in what we do. Why? Because the person can't say, "Oh, who cares? I said this, I did that." Now there will be repercussions, right? For certain things we say or we do, etc. But if a person understands how far the repercussions go, aren't they going to be extremely careful what they do? They should be. Not only that, but it gives them a heck of a lot more meaning. So now, 21st century, someone says, but I just want clarity. All these things are going wrong. You're right, but now there are doors that are open. But who's to say, I think in many ways, I understand where it comes from. And being in doubt, I understand. But the reality is, who are we to say that God owes us? That God owes us to show us some way, or that we should figure out in some way the measure for measure. Are we greater than Moshe Rabbeinu? No. Are we even close? No. What's the Torah telling me? You can't see God's face and live. Face it! We can't do that. We sometimes can understand things in hindsight. That's it. In the late 1800s, the Sfas Emes, the second Ger Rebbe said that we can't understand what we're going through. We can't. Even in our generation, we can't. So in previous generations, I'd say the same thing. How can we understand? We don't have any prophets today. There are no prophets. How is that possible? I do understand. We want clarity. And, we want to try and understand to the best of our ability why we're going through certain things, why we're being tossed around and all that. I get it. At the same time, I would say, who are you? Who are you to even demand that? We're living in a world of hiddenness since the temple's been destroyed. A lot of things we don't fathom at all. Come 2,000 years later, more. You want to say, based on the small level that we are spiritually, God owes us to show us the measure for measure? That's a little bit much. That's a little bit much. Sometimes, I will admit, God throws us a proverbial bone. God may show up.
In kindness.
I'll give one example. We spoke about the Nazis before. May their name be blotted out. So what happened after World War II? What was the bone that God threw the Jewish people after this whole destruction? Gave us the state of Israel, 1940. Yeah. Now, that was an absolute miracle, right? What was going on at the times and all that. Very true. Now, I am not going to be so bold to say that the reason the Holocaust happened is so we could get the land of Israel. No. We merited the land of Israel for whatever reason. That was an end result. But that's not the reason. Right? That's not the reason.
Well said. Yeah.
So we can't fathom what it is, but even in the darkest of times, and those were very dark times, right? The darkest of times, God opened up another avenue here. He opened up another door, right? That door is the land of Israel. Torah has been flourishing in the land of Israel. Greatest Torah being learned since the Second Temple, not in quality, obviously. But there are more people sitting and learning today than since then. But where's the greatest learning? It's here. Right? That's what the Talmud says. All the great, Torah learning academies outside the land of Israel are going to be replanted in Israel. Right? That has happened. Right? That has happened. Any Torah giant today, most Torah giants today, where did they get their main education? In Israel. Right? There are some that didn't. Okay, but most did. So, so there's a tremendous benefit. But you see what's going on. Country's being torn apart by the leftists, and all kinds of other things going on that, we have to fight for everything. It's a tremendous struggle. Sure. For Torah today and what they're trying to take away and all that. Fine.
Right.
But again, the end result? The end result is God gave us the land of Israel. Now, it doesn't mean he can't take it back before the Messiah comes. Seems highly unlikely. But, there is a medrash. There is a medrash that says when the Messiah comes, he's going to take all the Jews. We're going to be in the desert. It's going to bring everyone in. So that means technically we're not going to be here. Right now, could happen, could not happen. Very hard to imagine, in today's circumstances. But okay, regardless, nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But the point is that one of the end results, of World War II was the fact that God gave the Jewish people state of Israel. Right? So now, could that be God throwing a proverbial bone over here? Could be. But we're not going to say that's the reason. We don't know.
Right.
We definitely don't know.
Yeah, that would be.
But,
yeah.
But the point is that the doors in Europe were closed. They were sealed. These people's fate were sealed.
Oh, yeah. Cities
But the whole
decimated.
time said, even if one group is sealed, there's another group that's going to live. How do we know? Because we see what happened by Yaakov. When Yaakov meets Esav, what happens? He split up the camps. So if Esav destroyed the first camp, the other camp escaped. So before World War II, this is what the Avos Chaim said. That if God forbid, a whole group is destroyed in one part of the world, they'll still be in another part of the world. There'll still be Jews. The Jews are still going to exist, maybe in smaller numbers, but they're still going to exist. So that being the case, does that make sense why, that whole part of the world, those Jews got destroyed? Doesn't make sense, logically. I mean, we do have potential answers, but we don't know. Right? We don't know. And
it's like
for all the Holocaust
food.
survivors that are left, which aren't too many, imagine, a prophet came and said, that's the answer. I'm not so sure if some of the Holocaust survivors who lost all their family are going to accept it.
No.
Right? It's not something that they can accept. Right? It'd be very hard. Regardless. What's the point? The point is one door closes, another door opens. So we can see that in our own lives. But what do we concentrate on? We concentrate on the doors that are closed. This door is closed. The other door, I can't do this, can't do that. Other things, it's what I'm qualified to do. I can't, no one's hiring me, blah, blah, blah. But what about other doors that open? We forget about that. We don't, it's kind of like God saying, don't forget, I'm still here. I'm going to open other doors. But what do we concentrate on? The negative. Can't do this. That got closed. This got taken away.
Right. Half full or half empty.
We have to see it for what it is. And remember that anything can change at the bat of an eyelash. Now you're gonna say, okay, when's that gonna be? So I'm not a prophet. If I was a prophet, I wouldn't be on your show right now. I got better.
We'd have a little more views too.
I got better. I'd be, world famous. I'd be on the Roku network, which you're not putting me on right now, right? But that doesn't matter. I don't want to digress there. The point is that God gives us life. He breathed into the spirit of man life, gives us life, gives us everything. We have to show a little bit of gratitude. We complain about a lot of things. I'm not saying there are things that we shouldn't complain about. In general, really, we shouldn't complain. But in general, what happens? We question certain things, and we want answers. Well, I'm going to tell you a fundamental principle that we've spoken about before. And the answer is sometimes there are no answers. Sometimes you just got to, as the infamous
not palatable ones,
Whoopi Goldberg would say.
Sometimes the answer is no.
Sometimes you just got to suck it up. And you got to take it for what it is, even if it doesn't make sense, right? But I will say this, even if a person gets tossed around and if they see that other doors open, that's the focus. Not that the doors that are closed. You focus on the doors that are open. When you focus on the doors that are open, you have unbelievable gratitude because now you see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel when it's bleak. when it's dark.
For
right?
sure.
But we have to understand there is a light at the end under the tunnel, regardless of how we've been tossed around and things that happen. We're just not privy to when, and we are extremely impatient. Imagine going through a drive-through.
Tissue paper generation.
Yeah. Imagine going through a drive-through. You order burgers and you have to wait like 7 minutes. Where's my burger? What do you mean you got no fries? Come on. We are extremely impatient. Here in Israel, you stopped at a red light. When the light turns red, yellow, right? What's going to happen afterwards? It's going to turn green. People are already beeping before it turns green, right? If you go through red, yellow light, you get a ticket. You can certainly get a ticket. It's not green, right? Where would you like me to go? Beep as much as you want. Where would you like me to go? We have, I want to get there faster, quicker. I want to do this. I want to do that. Instantaneous. That's what this world is. We want everything instantaneously. You know what? It doesn't always work that way, right?
And you don't always get what you want. Yeah.
What's the famous song we hear sometimes? Can't always get what you want, right? You can't.
Rolling
Stones.
Stones.
Work that way, right? Doesn't work that way. But if I see the goodness, then I can show gratitude. And even if a person's going through a difficult time, they have a tremendous amount of gratitude. Right? I give one other example, then we'll wind down here. We pray every day. I mentioned this in my parsha class this week. We mention every day, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. I have an obligation to serve God with great joy. So I would say like this, that's one of the curses, by the way, that Rabbi Zachariah says that, if we do things by rote, we're not serving God with great joy. Punishment, very severe punishment, right? But I'm going to look at it a little bit different way, right? What's the gratitude here? How can we serve God with great joy when I'm getting beaten down in life, right? So what's the answer? The answer is very simple, and I think we should write this down. You should write a lot of these things down, and that is that we write things down that we're thankful for. Make a list. Make a list of 10 or 20 things that we're thankful for. Right? But, I'll make it very easy. Most people listening most likely came out of Christianity, right? Unless they were born Jews and returning to Judaism, right? Or they come out of Christianity, they want to convert, they're going to stay Noahide, whatever it is. Imagine where you were, before you started hearing these classes on Pirkei Avos. Imagine where you were before you started listening to Torah. 6 months ago, a year ago, longer. See where you're holding today. You might not be happy with what I did yesterday. You might not be happy the day before. Okay, right? Isn't it true? Right? Isn't it true? The Avos says in the gate of self-accounting, in the 3rd chapter, he says, what we should be thankful for? The animal activists going to hate me here. All the PETA pet activists, whatever you call them, right? He says we're better than animals. Shouldn't we be thankful we're greater than animals? Animals are programmed DNA. I see animals every Monday and Wednesday. Cows, I've seen cows, chickens, goats. Aren't we more, happy that we're greater than animals? People treat animals better than they treat their family, for goodness sakes. Treat them like they're part of the family. No offense to any family, any animal lovers out there. They're programmed DNA. I don't care if they're fluffy. I don't care, man's best friend, and all this. They're animals. We are better than animals because we're created as the pinnacle of creation. If we act like animals, we're no better than animals, then animals are greater than us because they were created before us in creation, right? But shouldn't I be thankful I don't live my life like an animal? Shouldn't I be thankful? Shouldn't I be thankful that, I'm not an idolater? Shouldn't I be thankful I'm not going in the wrong path and I'm trying to be moral, I'm trying to be ethical, and I'm trying to work on myself? We should be doing the moonwalk. I don't even know how to do that. We should be whistling Dixie over. I don't even know how to do that either. The point is we should be so ecstatic we're not those people anymore. Now you're going to tell me, okay, I got a lot to work on, and I'm trying to dig out of a cesspool and all. Okay, we understand all that. But aren't you better off than where you were?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has to, even if you didn't listen to my class on Pirkei Avos for the last year or more. Doesn't matter, right? But a person who comes to doesn't come to Torah, if a person's come to Torah mitzvahs, they're much better off than where they were. It doesn't matter where they're holding in the process, and we're a work in progress. Everybody's a work in progress. If we're all in a work in progress, we all have what to work on, right? We're not perfect by any stretch, 100%. At the same time, we have to cut ourselves some slack, and every single day, right? Maybe, certain point in the day, I should eat something and say, you know what? This is for being, not being the same person I was. This is for not being an idolater. This is for not getting angry when I should get angry or whatever, right? This is for going in the right path. That goes a long way. The evil inclination will say, you can't change. It's too hard. All these things may very well be true, right? But if I think in one way, where what I'm doing right now and where I'm holding right now, we have plenty what to work on. But if I see where I was, I'll be generous, 6 months ago, a year ago, and you see where you're holding today, does that mean you're perfect? No. Does that mean you don't have what to work on? No. But what do we see? We see that where we came from, and we see where we are now, there's progress. Tremendous amount of progress, some more, some less, that we should be ecstatic for. So when we say Yidu es Hashem b'simcha, that we have an obligation to serve God with great joy, and if you don't, you're doing it by rote, it's pretty bad. I mean, It's very severe. But what does it mean we're serving Him with great joy? Understanding where we came from, understanding where we have to go, how much we want to grow, but we should be.
Don't forget where you came from.
We should be so happy. Right. We should be so happy that we're not going in the wrong path. That quote unquote we've seen the light. And by seeing the light, that means we want to go in the right direction. And we're 10 times better off than we ever were before. Right? That there's no question. Does that mean you're perfect? No. Does that mean you don't have what to work on? No. Right? There's a lot we have to do. There's a lot of work to do over here. But at the same time, I'm ecstatic. Absolutely ecstatic at the fact that I can serve God. That's what I'm ecstatic about. Now, I have to go out and do it. And I have to do it in the right way. I have to reach certain levels, okay. But we can't give in to the evil inclinations. It's too hard. You're nothing. You're less than nothing. You're digging out of the cesspool. Maybe that is true to a certain extent. But it can't get us down where it's going to paralyze us. My Rebbe says, you live in the past, you have no future. Right, you have to think about where you came from, where you're holding now. And you should be ecstatic where you're holding now. That you're not holding where you were before.
Staying on that upper, it's hard though.
But if you're staying on that mediocre level, okay, that's a problem. But if we're continually growing, that's what God wants to see. So I do promise next week, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock Israel time, we are going to hit Mishna 7 part 2 because we didn't even scratch the surface here.
Intro.
17 parts, I don't know, but there'll definitely be a part 2.
Wow. Well, I am so grateful for this class. Thank you, Rabbi. You really helped clarify something in my mind that I think is very, very useful and helpful. And, you help me try to understand the equation to be more joyful. And I think that's useful for sure. So, but next week though, Rabbi, are we not dealing with Rosh Hashanah? Next week?
Rosh Hashanah is only on Monday night.
Right, so we can have a class on the same time, Saturday after Shabbat in Israel.
Yeah, Shabbos is going out earlier, so that should definitely be easier. But we should definitely be good.
All right, well that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear. So there you have it, folks. That's Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, live from Israel with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. We're going to have 2-7 Part B next Saturday at the earlier time that we started today because the sun's starting to set a little later. That's great news. Excellent.
Setting earlier.
Yes, awesome stuff. Well, that's good. We were able to get in. We got another 2.5-hour lesson plus today. Exciting. Now, folks, you can always support Rabbi Coffman. Visit him on his website, orthodoxconversion.com. You find links on where to support him there. And we just wish him well, that Hashem put great wind in his sails as he embarks on this venture to do exactly what Hashem is birthed in his heart 20 years ago and then put him on the shelf. You think he was on the shelf forever, he thought. But Hashem knew what he was polished and refined.
I will say one thing. The fact that I was still able to give classes, whatever, gave me, made me feel pretty good. But, still, even though I couldn't do it, exactly what I wanted to do, still, if I didn't have that, that would have been 10 times worse. So, God threw me a certain
I think you
phone over here. Said, okay, I'm going to help you with that as well, but we're going to limit it. But that, that was still very good.
You really, I think you copywrote something here that is just real good about the wringing out of the toothpaste tube.
I can see it in the brill in your hair.
Oh my gosh. Crazy stuff. But that's Hashem knows what he's doing, and trying to let life lie in his hands. Sometimes we feel so motivated to do more. I've always had a terrible tendency, Rabbi, to overdo it. And I don't know. Perhaps we'll balance that out in the lesson upcoming. I look forward to it. But so we're going to sign out for now, folks. We hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. And we'll see you all same time, Pirkei Avos, next week. Have a great day, folks.